Chapter 1494. Mo Tianji said, at the start of the battle, only 4 teams will go forward. The other 4 teams will be backup teams. As for Senior Li Chuanhua's independent team, it will be the last backup team and also the most important and crucial battle force. Senior, please be aware of this. Li Chuanhua nodded. Once you say it, I already understand everything. Don't worry. Mo Tianji nodded and said, since that's the case, the final battle will be decided as such. With his hands behind his back, he took 2 steps and said, I have a letter. Who can deliver it to Diwu Qingru for me? Deliver it to Diwu Qingru? The other party's military advisor? Yes. Li Xiangxi took a step forward. How about I make the trip personally? No way. Mo Tianji said, your position is too important. If you make the trip personally, regardless of Diwu Qingru's 7th Division's 700th letter of challenge, no matter how unwilling he is, no matter how unwilling Ro is, she will definitely make you stay. The person who delivers this letter can't have a high cultivation level, but can't be too low either. A 5th grade supreme martial artist is the most suitable. This way, the chances of escaping unscathed will be the greatest. Li Tongtian, you shall make the trip. Li Chuanhua directly appointed him. The great-grandson obeys. Li Tongtian took a step forward, his expression solemn. He took the letter from Mo Tianji and flew out, disappearing into the snowy sky like a gust of wind. May I ask, what exactly is written in the military advisor's letter? Li Xiangxi asked curiously. Nothing much. It's just, 10 days later, the final battle in the morning. Do you dare? That's all. Mo Tianji laughed softly. It's just the sentence. 10 days later, the final battle? That's right. 10 days? Isn't that a little too rushed? If it's a month later, Li Xiangxi took a light breath. 10 days is already the limit. It can't be more than that. All of the other parties' reinforcements have already arrived. Mo Tianji said indifferently, I believe that the other party is already prepared for an all-out battle. If we don't deliver this letter soon, or tomorrow at the latest, the other party will launch an all-out attack. That would be even worse, and they would be caught off guard. Book 7, Chapter 700. Li Xiangxi said, military advisor's words make sense. However, the situation is already so bad, why are you so confident? The other party will definitely accept this battle? If it were me, I would definitely not accept it. Mo Tianji smiled gently, because you're not Diwu Qingru. He is not Diwu Qingru. He said faintly, in these 10 days, I have sacrificed myself for my 120,000 brothers and 700,000 women and children. He had purposely fought for 10 days. The last 10 days. Actually, it doesn't matter if the final battle starts now. But, since I've come to this point, in the last moments of my life, I should at least enjoy the beautiful scenery to lessen my regrets. Who doesn't have parents? Who doesn't have a daughter? Who doesn't have a partner? Mo Tianji said disappointedly, the sins committed by your Li clan are now being reaped. Even though it's called retribution, how many innocents are involved? With our current strength, we won't be able to survive even if we die 1,000 times. Everyone present was somewhat dejected. Li Chuanhua sighed heavily. Allied army camp. Diwu Qingru was sitting opposite the ancestor of the Shao clan, Shao Qinyu. With a sincere respect and caution, he was dealing with the first ancestor of the Shao clan. Is the Ling clan not here yet? Shao Qinyu's face was solemn. Not yet. There must be some unforeseen event that delayed them. It's definitely impossible for them to be delayed. Ling Muyang will definitely not allow it. Since they haven't arrived yet, there must be an accident. They're all dead. Shao Qinyu said faintly, there's no need to wait. It's destined that they won't come. Unless it's the next batch. Diwu Qingru's eyelids twitched. This was exactly what he thought. No one from the law enforcement officers? Shao Qinyu asked. No, there's also no news of them. This time, Shao Qinyu didn't speak immediately. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, I think the law enforcement officers might be the ones who are delayed. He turned around and said, are you confident of winning the final battle now? Diwu Qingruo thought for a while and nodded affirmatively. Basically, there won't be too big of a problem. However, if you want to be safe and fully prepared, it's better to wait for the law enforcement officers. We're strong enough now, Xiao Qinyu said faintly. Then let's have the final battle. We'll succeed in one battle. Diwu Qingruo could hear the urgency in Xiao Qinyu's tone. However, he wasn't surprised and immediately agreed. Commander-in-Chief, Elder Xiao, the Li clan sent someone to deliver a letter. It says that it was sent to you by the Master of Manipulation and Calculation, Immortal. Someone reported from outside. Bring it in. Xiao Qinyu frowned. The letter was in his hands. Diwu Qingruo opened it directly. After taking a look, he couldn't help but smile. What's the content? Xiao Qinyu asked. Diwu Qingruo smiled and read it out loud. 10 days later, we'll have a final battle with you. Tianji Qingru will calculate victory and defeat. May I ask if Elder Xiaoqin you can give his brother 10 days to rest? This letter wasn't as simple as what Mo Tianji and Li Xiangxi had said. The actual content was written to two people at the same time. Diwu Qingruo and Xiao Qinyu. Since it's a request from my brother, how can I refuse? So what if I give him 10 days? Xiao Qinyu's eyes were touched and he sighed softly. Mo Tianji's words, may I give his brother 10 days to rest, directly touched the softest part of his heart. He thought of the last time he got drunk that day. The last witness was gone, and the sad, desperate and disheartened laughter of his brother when he left miserably seemed to echo in his ears again. Therefore, Xiao Qinyu made a decision right away. Not to mention 10 days, even if you want 20 days, I'll give it to you. Diwu Qingruo nodded. I have no objections. We can wait for reinforcements from the law enforcement officers in these 10 days. I'll immediately send a reply to Mo Tianji. I'll have to trouble the messenger to bring it back. The decisive battle that will decide our fate is about to begin. Chu Yang stood on the cliff of the Wind and Snow Mountain. On the other side, Mo Lei was rubbing the large bruise on Dong Wuxiang's back to promote blood circulation. Dong Wuxiang clenched his teeth, his black face full of pain. Speaking of which, this fellow was really bored out of his mind. He hadn't fought for the past few days and his hands were itchy. It was almost the same as a heavy smoker who couldn't get rid of his addiction. He said that his hands were itchy and he wanted to find someone to spar with. This wasn't a problem. How many people were there for him to spar with? Chu Yang, Mo Lei, and Mo Qingwu could all let him have his fill. But Dong Wuxiang said that there was no point in fighting with them and that it wasn't suffocating enough. Therefore, this fellow went straight to the strongest one and actually went to spar with Wu Jueqing, and Wu Jueqing was in an extremely depressed state at that time. When he saw that this fellow came looking for a beating, a ready-made punching bag was sent to him. Naturally, he wouldn't stand on ceremony. With a few punches and kicks, he turned this fellow into a snowball. While he was in a great mood, he gave this fellow a light slap on his thick back. Just this light slap was enough to make Dong Wuxiang unable to get up. He had been lying in front of everyone's feet for 6 hours now. Looking at his condition, his hands and heart should no longer be itchy. They had all shifted to his back. Was Wu Jueqing's slap so easy to bear? Even the Dharma Supreme had to rest for 3 months after taking a slap from Wu Jueqing. What more Dong Wuxiang, who was like an ant in front of Wu Jueqing now? Mo Lei rubbed his back hard, speechless. She said, both parties haven't made any moves for 4 days. It seems that both parties have reached some kind of tacit agreement. They should be starting to play big. Chu Yang nodded lightly. This result is not surprising. I can even be sure that this change is led by Tianji. Mo Qingwu was puzzled. She asked, why must it be my second brother? Can't Diwu Qingru do it? It's not that Diwu Qingru doesn't have such wisdom. It's just that Diwu Qingruo's side is in an absolutely dominant situation now. If he were to take the lead, both parties would definitely be at war by now. Who knows, the outcome might have already been decided. Chu Yang smiled. It's definitely impossible for it to be so quiet and peaceful. This should be the last bit of peace before the final battle. Mo Qingwu made an "oh" sound and said, Chu Yang, what should we do on our side? No one from our side participated in the previous few battles. Who says no one participated? On the ground, Dong Wuxiang snorted. Little girl, don't talk nonsense. You guys didn't participate, but I didn't even miss a single battle. I fought all the way to the end. I was angry and anxious. She said angrily, you still have the cheek to say that. Didn't you come back with half your life left? I really have nothing to say when I meet people like you who are crazy about battles. As she spoke, she rubbed her palms even harder. She said hatefully, you're born to be punched. Dong Wuxiang grimaced in pain, but he didn't cry out in pain. His woman loved him dearly. No matter how painful it was, he had to endure it. It wasn't easy for both sides to stop fighting. Instead of resting, you actually shamelessly went to spar with Elder Wu. You really don't know how many bowls of rice you've eaten. At the mention of this, Emole couldn't help but get angry. Elder Wu is at the peak of the world. He showed mercy this time. If he really gets angry, he can make you die without even knowing how you died with one slap. Unexpectedly, at the mention of this, Dong Wuxiang actually became excited. Then he said to Chu Yang, Big brother, you don't know, but I comprehended some saber essence after fighting with Senior Wu this time. Do you still remember what you said in the lower three heavens? The saber aura turning. Chu Yang's brows relaxed. Could it be that you comprehended it? Regarding the saber aura turning, see the fourth part. I can't say that I comprehended it yet. I just have some ideas. Although Dong Wuxiang was lying on the ground and couldn't move, he was beaming with joy. Once I can stand up, I'll go and spar with Elder Wu again. I believe. Chapter 1495. The bruise on Dong Wuxiang's back had been deliberately hit by Wu Jueqing. The purpose was to make him quiet down for a few days so that he wouldn't turn into a fly and bother people. After being hit by Wu Jueqing, the pain was deliberately increased by 15 times. The pain caused by that palm was unbearable even for a man of steel like Dong Wuxiang. The rubbing just now was to disperse the blood clots and promote blood circulation. Even if she used a little strength, Dong Wuxiang could barely endure it. But now, Emole used 20% of her true power in a fit of anger. Even though it was only 20% of her strength, it was no small matter. Dong Wuxiang was in so much pain that he opened his mouth wide but couldn't make a sound. He was like a catfish on the verge of dying of thirst, rolling his eyes as if he was about to die. Phew, be gentler. Oh my God, are you trying to kill me? Dong Wuxiang only managed to catch his breath after a long while, sweating profusely from the pain. You deserve it. Emole rolled her eyes, showing no sympathy at all. She had long known that Dong Wuxiang's injury was dangerous. Although that rubbing hurt a lot, it wouldn't really cause any future problems. Otherwise, no matter how angry she was, she wouldn't have used her true power. Women. Dong Wuxiang looked up and sighed. After a long while, Dong Wuxiang finally caught his breath and said, in the last few battles, I saw Li Xiongtu. I saw him every time. He took a deep breath and said, I can clearly feel that my old enemy is closing in constantly. He's very fast. I don't want to be overtaken by my old enemy. Li Xiongtu? It's actually him? Has he also reached the supreme martial artist level? Emole frowned and immediately became concerned. She naturally knew that Dong Wuxiang was the greatest opponent in this generation. The only opponent she acknowledged was Li Xiongtu. As one of the tribulations, Dong Wuxiang had already left Li Xiongtu far behind him previously. Emole already didn't take this to heart. She didn't expect to hear Dong Wuxiang say that he saw him again here. And judging from Dong Wuxiang's words, Li Xiongtu's advancement didn't seem slow. At least, he could already threaten the current Dong Wuxiang. It's not just the supreme martial artist level. Li Xiongtu is already a peak 4th grade supreme martial artist now. And the fierce battle intent on him is getting stronger and stronger. He's definitely not inferior to me. Dong Wuxiang's thick eyebrows twitched. As one of the tribulations, I only reached the peak of supreme venerable grade with the help of boss. Li Xiongtu is not a tribulation, but his progress is still so terrifying. To be honest, Emole remained silent. She naturally understood what Dong Wuxiang meant. It had only been a few short years since Dong Wuxiang and the others had advanced from martial king level cultivation in the upper three heavens all the way to supreme martial artist level now. Even with the help of Chu Yang's countless elixirs and miraculous medicines, it was still a shocking miracle that Dong Wuxiang and the others could advance. However, Li Xiong too didn't have such conditions. Yet, he was able to greatly improve at the same speed. What did this mean? Emole couldn't help but worry. You don't have to worry too much about this. Chu Yang smiled and said, of course, you will have your own opportunities, but Li Xiong too will also have his own encounters. For example, the two heavenly treasures. You obtained a 10,000-year-old Ganoderma lucidum at the northern border. Why couldn't Li Xiong too obtain an 8,000-year-old king ginseng elsewhere? Chu Yang said, some people who are destined to be extraordinary will naturally encounter some miraculous encounters in their lives, and some blessings from the heavens. This is not surprising. Li Xiong too is resolute and has a straightforward temper. He is a natural-born hero. It is not surprising for him to have such opportunities. Dong Wuxiang said, yes. I understand this. Actually, this is not what I am thinking about. Of course, I am eager to fight with Li Xiong too, but I will definitely not stop and wait for him. Of course. If you wait for him, you will lose. Chu Yang smiled. Are we going to intervene in this decisive battle? Emo Qinggu asked from the side. There has been no news from Emo Tianji's side. From this, it can be seen that he doesn't want us to intervene. Chu Yang said, to be honest, if we participate in this battle rashly, the risk is really too great. The possibility of death will be greater than any of the previous adventures. Therefore, Emo Tianji doesn't dare to make the decision himself. As for whether the brothers will participate in the battle or not, he is actually waiting for my choice. Chu Yang frowned and looked down from the top of the mountain. Then what is your choice? Behind him, Wu Juecheng's grave and deep voice came. My choice is... Chu Yang grinned. His gaze slid across the faces of Dong Wuxiang, Emole, Emo Qinggu and the others. He clenched his fists tightly and raised them before his chest. Even if it is dangerous, even if it means death, we must participate. The last 5 words were spoken with a pause. As these words were spoken, Wu Juecheng, who was at the back, could clearly sense a battle intent that was almost about to solidify into a physical form, surging violently from the 2 men and 2 women in front of him. Wu Juecheng's eyes revealed sincere admiration. He said, do you know that if it is really a decisive battle this time, there will be more than 2,000 supreme martial artists from the allied forces of the superclans and the law enforcement officers. And there will be no less than 200 supreme martial artists of 7th grade and above, and at least 100 supreme martial artists of 8th grade and above. In fact, there will be no less than 20 lower-grade supreme martial artists. The strongest among you now is only at the peak of 2nd-grade supreme martial artist. It can be said that once you participate in the battle, the possibility of death is really too high. The most conservative estimate is more than 10%. Wu Juecheng's eyes flashed. He said, you are all tribulation sword masters. If you die here, isn't it? Chu Yang smiled amiably. Life and death are up to fate. If we are destined to die, then even if we practice martial arts at home, we will also go crazy. If a meteorite falls from the sky, it can also smash our heads and cause our brains to burst open. No matter how we die, there is only one outcome, death. Since that is the case, why should we be afraid? Dong Wuxiang laughed wildly, heroic and majestic. He laughed loudly and said, well said. What boss said is exactly what I am thinking. If we die, we will die with our heads up. If we don't, we will live for thousands of years. Why should we care so much? This sentence, which had a strong roguish nature, was actually full of heroism and majesty when it came out of Dong Wuxiang's mouth. It didn't make one feel that it was indecent at all. Chu Yang smiled and said, at the end of the day, every experience of life and death is, in fact, an improvement of the spirit's belief. And when the will is strong, the cultivation will also be strong. Even ordinary people also say that wealth comes from danger. And martial arts practitioners need to roll around between life and death. Those who don't break down are transcendents. Wu Jueqing's eyes revealed a smile. He said, "Well said. This is how a person should be, no matter what it is, as long as you do it. Life and death, victory and defeat, why should we care so much?" Dong Wushang said, "Boss, since we have already decided to participate in the battle, should we inform second brother Gu's side?" Chu Yang smiled and said, "Gu Duxing's desire for battle has never been inferior to yours. Besides, there are still 2 freaks who have just been reborn there. I believe that even if we don't do anything, they won't let go of this opportunity for actual combat." He narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "All right, we haven't participated in the battle these few days, so we don't have the right to speak. But Wushang, you have been there every time. Have you seen those 4 guys miss a single battle?" "Not even a single one." Dong Wushang laughed. "Basically, we can hear the howls of Ant Dog in every battle." At the thought of those 2 buffoons, even Mo couldn't help but laugh. Right at this moment, Mo Qingwu suddenly said with some surprise, "Elder Wu, why have you changed your appearance?" Chu Yang turned and saw Mo Qingwu staring at Wu Jueqing with a face full of surprise, as if she was so shocked that she couldn't speak. The 2 men, Chu Yang and Dong Wushang, couldn't help but shake their heads in bewilderment. Had he changed? However, after Mo Qingwu said so, the 2 of them also vaguely felt that Wu Jueqing's appearance had indeed changed a little. But exactly what had changed, they couldn't put their finger on it. When it came to observing other people's appearance and clothes, men were naturally slower than women. He turned and also exclaimed in surprise, "Elder Wu, why have you become so much younger? Also, your hair has actually turned black again. Did you eat some kind of heavenly treasure to retain your youth?" Chu Yang and Dong Wushang looked at each other at the same time, ashamed of each other's slowness. They actually didn't notice such an obvious change. They actually needed someone to remind them before they could see that Wu Jueqing was indeed showing signs of returning to his youth. And the change was quite obvious. His previously white hair had actually started to turn black from the roots. In terms of appearance, he was at least 20 years younger. Wu Jueqing smiled and said, "There's no need to eat any heavenly treasure. I'm just converting my cultivation into vitality and changing my appearance a little, trying to look as close to how I looked when I was young." "Elder Wu is really amazing. You can even do this." Mo Qingwu and Mo Lei both looked envious. Both of them were women, so how could they not know the value of Wu Jueqing's technique? This was almost equivalent to retaining eternal youth. Being able to stay young forever, no matter which woman it was, had an extremely strong attraction. It was almost irresistible. If given the choice between life and appearance, most women would choose the latter. Without beauty, what was the use of having a long life? But they would never think that no matter how beautiful they were, without life, it was equivalent to having no future. "I'm still at the stage of figuring out that technique." Wu Jueqing smiled and said, "When I've figured out a whole set of effective techniques, I'll definitely impart it to you." Mo Qingwu and Mo Lei cheered at the same time. "That's great." Chapter 1496. Beside him, Dong Wushang was also puzzled. "Yes, what do they look like? Young or old? To us men, do we need to care so much about this? We're not women who love to look good, as long as that thing is still there. No matter what, we're still men. Men don't participate in beauty pageants anyway." Wu Jueqing smiled warmly, with a hopeful gaze that came from the bottom of his heart. He said slowly, "If I see them one day, I'm afraid that they won't recognize me." He took a breath. "After so many years, they must have changed a lot. I really can't guarantee that I'll still be able to recognize them at a glance. Also, their cultivation is definitely higher than mine now. I may not be able to discover them. Since I'm not confident of recognizing them, I can only let them discover me. If you are different from him because of Part 7 Chapter 7:12 because we don't know each other and miss each other in the end." Wu Jueqing smiled bitterly. "I'm afraid that I'll really break down." Chu Yang and Dong Wushang only felt an inexplicable heaviness in their hearts, but also a somewhat warm and blocked feeling. So that's how it is. So that's how it is. I'm afraid that they won't recognize me. Wu Jueqing has actually started preparing now, preparing for the reunion of his brothers after a long time. It was clear how much he valued and cared about the reunion. Or perhaps, this was already the last bit of hope in his life. If he lost even this last bit of hope, as he said himself, he would really break down. Chu Yang's heart ached, and he could empathize with him. He said seriously, "The two of you will definitely meet again. I have no doubts about this." Wu Jueqing's gaze was fixed on the distant horizon, as if his gaze could penetrate the layers of clouds and snow in the sky. He said seriously, "Yes, we will definitely meet again. I have no doubts about this. I have no doubts about this. In these few days, remember to make use of the time to rest, recuperate, and conserve your energy. You must ensure that your cultivation and physical strength are at their peak condition. Only then will you have the highest chance of survival when you enter the battlefield." Part 7 Chapter 7:12. You and he are different. If you really meet your brothers in the future and hope to get along with them for a long time, without solid battle experience, you may end up suffering a tragic fate. Perhaps, it will lead to a bleak result. Do you understand? Chu Yang said in a heavy voice. I understand. I will let myself live well. Wu Jueqing said. He let out a cold laugh. He said, I am Wu Jueqing. I will never become a burden to my brothers. After a long while, Wu Jueqing asked, Chu Yang, I want to tell you something. I've been thinking about this for a long time. But he didn't know whether he should do it or not. In the end, it's best to ask for your opinion first. Chu Yang said, Oh? What is it that could make you so hesitant, Senior Wu? Is it related to me? Wu Jueqing frowned and said, Even if you say it's related, it's still related, right? Actually, I've been thinking for the past 2 days whether I should look for the Dharma Supreme, Diwu Chochang. Chu Yang was taken aback. Huh? Why are you looking for him? Assassinate him? He's not easy to deal with. Wu Jueqing replied, How could that be? You know it too. The Dharma Supreme was also one of the tribulations back then. Most importantly, he also suffered the same misunderstandings as us brothers. Although I don't have any good feelings towards him. In fact, I even have a huge grudge against him for sneak attacking and using him. But in light of the fact that we were once tribulations, I feel that informing him and letting him put down the knot in his heart can also be considered as a form of justice among tribulations. If he can come to his senses and turn back, what's the little grudge between him and me? He smiled and said, More importantly, if the relationship between him and his brothers hasn't changed, then as long as the knot in his heart is untied, you will have one less obstacle. You will be able to unify the heavens with the smallest price. At the very least, the entire situation of the war in the Northwest will change instantly. Chu Yang was silent for a while. Then he said solemnly, No. Wu Jueqing asked curiously, No? In Wu Jueqing's opinion, this would only bring benefits and no harm to the overall situation. Chu Yang might be hesitant to evaluate the feasibility of this, but he didn't expect Chu Yang to reject it outright. Why? Absolutely not. Chu Yang sucked in a breath of cold air and said, Fortunately, you didn't go. Fortunately, you came to ask for my opinion. If you really went, with Diwu Chochang's unfathomable schemes and various means, you might really never return. The possibility of you dying in his hands is 10,000%. Wu Jueqing sneered and said, Bah, just him? If he really dares to argue with me, I'll give him a good thrashing. Chu Yang smiled faintly and said, One's cultivation is not everything. Let me give you an example. If you were to go and tell him the whole story, the Dharma Supreme would be greatly shaken and cry bitterly, regretting his past actions and even wanting to commit suicide on the spot. What would you do? Then he would be very grateful to you for telling him the truth and even kneel down and kowtow to you. How would you feel at this moment? Then he would hold your arm and reminisce with you, telling you about the past when he faced the tribulation. Would you reminisce with him? What do you mean by this? Of course he would be greatly shaken. It wouldn't be surprising for him to commit suicide. As for his gratitude to me afterward, it's also reasonable. I told him the truth about the greatest regret of his life. I can accept his kneeling down and kowtowing to me. And reminiscing about the past, that's the only thing that I cherish? If that's the case, you would have died at least 3 times. The first time, he committed suicide and you tried to stop him. At the moment when you failed and he was ready, you died. The second time, he knelt down and kowtowed to you. You accepted his kowtow and your heart was no longer prepared. The moment you helped him up, you would still die. The third time, the two of you reminisced about the past tribulations together. That's the thing that stirred your heart the most. Even if you were to attack him, you would still have done it. Don't doubt my words. The Dharma Supreme. Diwu Chochang would definitely do that. Chu Yang said in relief. Fortunately, you didn't go. Fortunately, you came to discuss it with me. Otherwise, with your temper, you really wouldn't have been able to return. Wu Jueqing thought about it and couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. An old man who had lived for 40,000 years had a willpower that was 100 times stronger than ordinary people. In an instant, he had already sorted out the cause and effect, as well as the possible changes in the situation. If the Dharma Supreme had really done something like repenting first, committing suicide, thanking him, kowtowing to him and reminiscing about the past with his temper, he would really resonate with him and become extremely melancholic. Perhaps even dying 3 times would be considered a minimum, if at that time he was basically completely unguarded. If the Dharma Supreme launched any sneak attack, his chances of survival would indeed be infinitely close to 0. Diwu Chochang, the Dharma Supreme, would he really do that? After all, he was also once one of the tribulations. After all, he also had a close relationship with his brothers. After all, he had also once experienced such heartbreaking trauma and such an unforgettable misunderstanding. Would he really? Wu Jueqing said sadly, shouldn't he be happy that a lifelong regret and misunderstanding has been resolved? If I can do it, why can't he, who is also a tribulation, do it? But he's different from you. Completely different, 2 completely different concepts. Chu Yang said, firstly, you were rescued because of your own fate, while he made use of the divine spirits of the other brothers to force himself to stay. In terms of results, he is the one who really sacrificed his brothers for his own sake. The main reason he was able to survive and come out was because he burned the divine spirits of his brothers to protect himself and set up a trap for them to save him alone. From this point of view, what he did back then was already a betrayal of all his brothers. Secondly, he now has the aura of the extraterrestrial demon hidden in his body. In essence, he is already not on the same path as all of you. Or rather, he is no longer human at all. Thirdly, he has been in charge of the heavens for 10,000 years. Chu Yang said deeply, power will cause a change in one's heart. The current Dharma Supreme, based on his way of doing things, is already sufficiently dark mentally, to the extent that it makes one's hair stand on end. Now, even if his brothers still accept him, he no longer dares to, nor does he have the face to, enter that group again. Chu Yang finished in one breath and said, therefore, don't go. Don't harbor any fantasies, no matter what. Chu Yang was really thankful. Wu Jueqing, this noble lord from 40,000 years ago, still had the same temperament. Did he really think that just because he cared so much for others, he cared as much as he did for himself? Other things aside, the Dharma Supreme had already done such a series of things one after another. How could he be the same as Wu Jueqing? With Chu Yang's explanation, even Wu Jueqing himself broke out in cold sweat. Wiping away his sweat, he said, that was really close. Previously, I had really thought of leaving without saying goodbye to inform the Dharma Supreme. From the looks of it now, I'm practically sending myself to my death without a word. Chu Yang was speechless. If this old fellow wasn't one of the tribulations back then, how could he have survived? If he wasn't the descendant of supreme martial artist Chen Feng, how could he have survived? If he hadn't met Chu Yang, how could he have survived? It must be said that Wu Jueqing was really too lucky to be able to survive until now. Just the fact that he had survived was already heaven-defying. On the other side, Chu Lu was waiting in that secret place for Master Wu Jueqing's arrival. However, he didn't come, no matter how much she waited. No matter how much she waited, he still didn't come. Even though Lu's willpower was greater than that of an adult, She was after all only in her teens and was still a half-grown child. Gradually, she became anxious, afraid that something might happen to her master. Gradually, she became restless. After all, before Wu Jueqing left, he had said that there would be a great battle this time. You don't have to be so worried about Elder Wu's safety. With Elder Wu's cultivation, there's already no one who can match him in this heavenly layer. There definitely won't be any accidents. Or perhaps he was delayed by something. He should be here in a while. Wan Renjia saw the anxiety in Chu Le's heart and couldn't help but comfort her. Chu Le frowned and said, I also know that Master's cultivation is very high and there shouldn't be any accidents, but I'm afraid. Chapter 1497. I saw Dong Wushang. He's here too? Li Xiong too stood beside Mo Tianji and spoke in a very solemn yet seemingly casual tone. He clearly wanted to express something very formally, yet he said it very casually. He was not a scheming person to begin with, so doing this made others feel particularly uncomfortable. Oh! Mo Tianji raised his eyes, as if he didn't care at all about what Li Xiong said. I saw Dong Wushang in the battle. He's indeed powerful. He's invincible in the battle formation. And his current cultivation is higher than mine. Much higher. Very good, really good. He's much stronger than I expected. Li Xiongtu's eyes were filled with fanaticism. He said lightly, in the third heavens, some of you were not as good as me, and some of you were at most on par with me. But now, all of you should have surpassed me and become my goal. We are of the same generation. The worst thing in life is not having a goal to reach. And now I have 10 goals. Li Xiongtu said. Congratulations. Rui Badong curled his lips. You actually have so many goals. Who do you think you can catch? This sentence was very sarcastic, and even very disapproving of it. Li Xiongtu snorted and looked at Rui Badong. I can definitely catch up with you. I think the first one to catch up with me is you. When I catch up with you, I will beat you up so badly that even your mother can't recognize you. Rubadong screamed in panic and jumped a step back. He patted his chest and said in a shrill voice, Oh my, I'm so scared. I'm a peak second-grade supreme martial artist, and today I'm being threatened by a fourth-grade supreme martial artist. I'm so scared. Li Xiongtu's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Rui Badong continued to panic. I heard such a terrifying threat. Should I nip the bud in the bud? Do you think I should just beat you to death, or let you experience the feeling of even your mother doesn't recognize you? What if I beat you to death? Charcoal Head, why don't you give me a suggestion? Wait till you catch up to this supreme martial artist before you brag. The words, Charcoal Head, made Li Xiongtu's face even darker. He snorted and turned to leave. The high-level supreme martial artists of the Li clan were running back and forth. Everyone was gathering materials for the formation for Mo Tianji. Sighs could be heard everywhere. The gloomy look on Li Chuanhua's face became more and more intense. Clearly, the progress was not optimistic at all. At this moment, suddenly, someone came to report, Elder Ancestor, there's a young lady outside. She says her surname is Chu and she's here to look for Mo Tianji. She had 3 attendants with her. All 4 of them are Supreme Being level experts. Li Chuanhua frowned. Surname Chu? A young girl? A martial saint expert? Please come in. Li Chuanhua said, the Allied forces shouldn't be so childish as to use such undercover methods, right? When Chu Le stepped in, everyone in the court was attracted by this young girl. Although the little girl was only 14 or 15 years old, she had developed extremely well during this period of time. She was also under the meticulous care of Master Wu Jueqing and Big Brother Chu Yang. That kind of facial features that belonged to a peerless beauty, had already started to show its power. In everyone's eyes, a young girl in white suddenly appeared from the sky full of flying snow and walked into the hall slowly. She came and went as if she was floating, untainted by worldly affairs. Although she was still young, her body hadn't fully matured yet, but that pure and holy aura was even more intense. It was as if a pure and true fairy had suddenly appeared in the world. Not only was she peerless in her beauty, but her features were so exquisite that they could cause the downfall of countries and cities. Moreover, because of the illness that had plagued her since she was young, although her chronic illness had already disappeared, there was still a kind of delicate and pitiful aura around her. This seemed to have suffered some grievances. Who could bear to let such a peerless beauty suffer grievances? They deserved to die. Everyone present felt their hearts ache at the same time. A strong feeling of wanting to protect and take care of her arose spontaneously. Although the mortals clearly knew that even the weakest divine immortal was much more powerful than them, and that it wasn't their turn to protect her at all, they couldn't help but think this way in their hearts: I'd rather die than let her be bullied. Even Li Chuanhua's eyes couldn't help but flash with a strong sense of admiration. As for the others, it was naturally even more unbearable. Some of them even went into a daze. Everyone couldn't help but exclaim in their hearts, there's actually such a woman in this world. She's so beautiful that she gathers the essence of heaven and earth. The two evil brothers, Li Ju and Li Batian, instantly widened their eyes and opened their mouths. They looked at Chu Le and were completely distracted for a moment. There was a kind of faint light flickering in the depths of their eyes. If such a beauty could be taken into a room, Li Chuanhua already concluded with just one look, this girl definitely couldn't be a spy. Because no one would bear to let such a girl be a spy. Even if it was a reckless waste of a heavenly treasure, it wouldn't be such a reckless waste. May I know who you are? Li Chuanhua turned to look at the surroundings and asked in a gentle voice. Originally, this sentence shouldn't have been asked by him, the elder ancestor of the Li clan. However, at this moment, everyone in the hall seemed to have lost the ability to speak at the same time. Other than Li Chuanhua, this 10,000-year-old monster, the rest of the people were either lost in admiration of beautiful things or in a daze. There were even people like Li Ju and Li Batian who were directly in a lustful dream. Li Chuanhua was very dissatisfied with this. Cultivating without cultivating one's heart would lead to nothing in the end. The descendants of the Li clan were indeed rotten to the core at this point. Apart from asking for information, this sentence also contained a bit of the cultivation of a middle-grade supreme martial artist. It was like a loud and clear bell, ringing loudly in everyone's ears. Immediately, those souls that were about to leave their bodies were retracted. In an instant, most of the supreme martial artists who had regained their senses lowered their heads in shame. They turned their gazes away and cried out in their hearts, "Demoness, what a demoness!" However, there were some younger ones who still couldn't take their eyes off her. Once the shock of unparalleled beauty was gone, what replaced it was a strong lust and the most urgent desire to possess her. Among them, Li Ju was the most. I am Imo Tianji's friend. Chu didn't move at all in the face of the crowd of supreme martial artists from the Li clan. She replied in an extremely calm manner. Just this calmness from the bottom of her heart was enough to make Li Chuanhua see her in a different light. A young girl of 14 to 15 years old. Faced with the crowd of over 100 supreme martial artists and the pressure of a middle-grade supreme martial artist, her expression was as usual and her heart was unaffected. This in itself was already an extremely impressive achievement. So you are Brother Tianji's friend. Li Ju smiled and took a step forward. He put on the most perfect posture, like a jade tree in the wind with the most amiable smile. I am Li Ju and I can be said to be bosom friends with Brother Tianji. Since you are Brother Tianji's friend, you are my friend too. Since you are here, Li Ju will naturally treat you with all his heart. This guy was already blinded by lust. With his soul incomplete, he actually didn't notice that his clan's elder master was in the middle of a conversation with Chu Lu and forcefully interrupted the conversation. Li Chuanhua's face instantly turned as black as the bottom of a pot. He looked at Li Ju with a gaze that almost wanted to cut him into pieces. It was too embarrassing. It was really too embarrassing. This young girl was very young. She was at most 15 years old and had already reached the level of a supreme martial artist. She was obviously a descendant of a great teacher. And his own grandson. He actually didn't follow the etiquette in front of such a person. His behavior was even more unbearable. If news of this got out, he would inevitably be despised. Even if he was already dead, his reputation would be much worse. Chu Lu smiled lightly and said, "Thank you, Duke Li." As the Grand Duke of the Li clan, Li Ju wasn't usually someone who lusted after women. At least on the surface, he was still passable, and his self-cultivation was also quite good. He shouldn't have been emotional, but for some reason, after hearing Chu Lu's thanks, he actually felt as if his whole body was floating, as if even his bones were lighter. For a moment, he was so dazzled that he didn't even notice that his own ancestor's face had turned black. He didn't even notice that his own father was desperately trying to signal him with his eyes. "Miss, you're really too polite." Li Ju's smile became even more gentle and amiable, looking very understanding. "May I know your name, miss?" Although Chu Lu was young, she had been plagued with illness since she was young and had really gone through a lot of suffering. Her wisdom had already far exceeded her actual age. Furthermore, she had a tribulation sword master as her elder brother and a poison doctor from 40,000 years ago, Wu Jueqing, as her master. Her mind was really nimble and could be said to be full of tricks, far surpassing that of ordinary people. Especially because of her childhood illness, even if it was said that she had seen all the ways of the world and experienced the vicissitudes of life, it wouldn't be an exaggeration. However, because of her experiences when she was young, her personality was also slightly extreme. At this moment, when she saw Li Ju approaching without knowing when to back down, she didn't even need to turn her eyes to know what this fellow was up to. She instantly felt disgusted and a wave of anger rose in her. "Just based on your greasy hair and powdered face, you actually want to be lustful towards me? You're really blind." In a fit of anger, she wanted to poison this fellow to death. After thinking for a while, she forcefully suppressed it. Hearing Li Ju's words, there was still no anger on Li's face. Instead, she rolled her eyes and smiled sweetly. She actually used the heaven enchanting technique that Zi Sheqing had taught her and said, "My surname is Chu, but I can't tell you my name." This smile was really like the first blooming of a strange fetus, beautiful beyond compare. And her tone even had a hint of natural naivety, as if an underage girl was acting coquettishly. Li Ju was instantly lost. His eyes widened and his bones went soft. He actually said with a drooling face, "Why can't you tell me?" Chu Lu seemed to be slightly annoyed and reprimanded. How can a girl's name be casually told to a stranger? Between her annoyance and reprimand, her features were really picturesque and charming. Such a scene was really difficult to describe and write. Coupled with the heaven enchanting technique, Li Ju's heart and soul were instantly intoxicated. For a moment, it was as if he was in the clouds and riding on the clouds. Today is the birthday of the alliance leader of Cold Moon Song. I wish him a happy birthday. Speaking of which, the alliance leader of Cold Moon Song has always been known as Old Teacher Song. Today, when I said, I want to celebrate Old Teacher Song's birthday, in the author's group chat, a bunch of great gods suddenly popped up. Going to Japan? I was completely speechless at that moment. Chapter 1498. Li Liju smiled enchantingly and said, "How am I a stranger? You're Mo Tianji's friend, so you're my friend too. Since we're friends, what's wrong with you telling me your name?" For a moment, he actually felt the thrill of flirting with her. Li Ju had a steady mind and shouldn't have been so easily bewitched by Chu Lu. However, he had been dealt with a series of blows during this period of time. Moreover, the Li clan was in a life and death situation now. At this moment, he was completely unguarded against Chu Lu. Never would he have thought that such a beautiful young lady would actually plot against him. He fell for it instantly. Chu Lu smiled innocently again and said, "You're really unreasonable. I'm talking to that old man upstairs. I'll tell you after I'm done with him. Okay?" Her "okay" was even more melodious and soul-stirring. At this moment, Li Ju felt as if all the bones in his body had melted. He almost collapsed like a pile of mud thrown into water. Very responsibly, he waved his hand and said disdainfully, "What's there to talk about with that old man? Don't bother about him. My father always says that that old bastard is very annoying. If he doesn't allow me to do this, I can't do that either. He has 100 or 1,000 rules and regulations. He always has his reasons. You'd better tell me first. What's your name? Good younger sister, just tell me. In his infatuation, he even called her good younger sister. The moment these words came out, the entire hall of the Li clan instantly fell into silence. Almost everyone present couldn't believe what they had heard. Pairs of eyes also bulged out in that instant. What did the Grand Duke say just now? Is there something wrong with my ears? Right now, everyone didn't feel anything about that extremely frivolous good younger sister anymore. What they felt was the first few sentences. They were really too earth-shattering. They were really earth-shattering sentences. Old bastard, old fool, old fogey. In an instant, Li Wubua's face turned ghastly pale. Beads of sweat the size of soybeans started to form on his forehead. His eyes were wide open, yet he felt that everything before him was pitch black. This is my son? My dear son. How is this my son? This was simply an ancestor who wanted to kill them. I'm done for. I've been played to death by this ancestor today, and he didn't even leave me a way out. What was a scam? Here was the most perfect and realistic interpretation. This was the real deal, the real deal, the real deal, and it wasn't just a little bit of a scam. Li Chuanbua, who was sitting high up, was currently shrouded in a storm of murderous aura that could erupt at any moment. Everyone lowered their heads, fearing that they would be caught in the crossfire if they came into contact with their ancestors' murderous gaze. Chu Lu still felt unsatisfied. She tilted her head and blinked her large eyes innocently with the suspicion of a young girl. He asked, She's not even close to you. How can you call her little sister? Is what you said true? Did your father really say that? Isn't that old man your ancestor? At this moment, Li Ju was already deep in the illusion of the heaven enchanting technique. He felt that he was wise and mighty. Hearing this, he waved his hand valiantly. His movements were natural and smooth. He let out a hearty laugh. Bullshit ancestor. Isn't he just an old guy who won't die? What's there to fake? What kind of person is my father? My father is vile spawn. Li Wubua finally roared. A mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. Trembling, he shouted in grief and indignation, Li Ju, you vile spawn. But when did I say that? I've fucking been scammed to death. His tone was panicked and his heart was bleeding. He was anxious, scared and terrified. Even his lips were trembling and his entire body was shaking. For a moment, he felt that even his tongue was numb from fear. He couldn't even say the words he wanted to say to defend himself. Son, please don't call me father. Can I call you father? I can even call you ancestor. But please don't say too much. Li Chuanbua cast a cold glance at him and shouted, Shut your mouth. Let him speak. Continue. In the main hall of the Li clan, everyone's faces were green and their lips were pale. They looked at Li Ju and Li Wubua's father with shock as if they had seen a ghost. Damn, he's the clan leader indeed. He's the Grand Duke indeed. Damn, he really doesn't care about anything and dares to say anything. Chu pursed her lips and smiled. She quietly removed the heaven-enchanting charm. Fletcher, I'll torture you to death. At this moment, Li Ju finally came to his senses. Recalling what he had done and said just now, he broke out in cold sweat almost instantly. Even his outer robes were drenched. His eyes were already in a daze. He only felt that his heart was beating like a drum in his chest, thump, 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 as if it could jump out of his chest the next moment. Oh my God, what did I say just now? It seems like, can't be. It really seems like, oh my God, I'm going to die. In that instant, he felt as if the world was spinning. He turned around in a daze and saw that everyone in the main hall was looking at him as if they were looking at an idiot. Moreover, it was the kind of idiocy that made one admire them. He had seen idiots before, but he had never seen such an idiot. This was the god of idiocy. It was enough to make all the idiots in the world worship him. The only one who was different from the rest was his father. At this moment, he was lying limply on the floor of the main hall, looking at him as if he was a son who had committed a grave mistake. He was looking at his own father in shock and horror. Li Ju shuddered violently and opened his hands. His 10 fingers spread apart uncontrollably as he cried out in panic, I didn't say those words. It really wasn't me. Everyone covered their faces in unison. If it wasn't you, could it be me? Under the watchful eyes of more than 100 supreme martial artists, you actually dared to swallow back the words you said? In that instant, everyone felt as if 10,000 alpacas were galloping across their hearts. What the heck? They didn't realize that their Grand Duke was actually such a weirdo in the past. Li Chunbo was so angry that he laughed instead. Good. After saying good 3 times in a row, he said in a gentle tone, "Tell me, if you didn't say those words, then who did?" Li Ju shuddered all over. Suddenly, he came back to his senses and pointed at Chu Lu. The veins on his temples bulged as he roared, "She said it! She said it! Demoness! She is a demoness!" He rushed up to Li Chuanbo, turned around and pointed at Chu Lu while trembling. "Elder Master, she said it, she said it?" At this moment, Grand Duke Li was already somewhat neurotic. It was obvious that he had turned the goddess that he admired so much just a moment ago into a life-saving straw. As long as he could save his own life, what was a woman to him? "Shut up!" Li Chuanbo finally couldn't hold it in any longer and shouted fiercely. This shout was like a sudden clap of thunder on a sunny day. Outside, a snowy peak thousands of feet away exploded with a bang. Li Ju stood there in a daze. Suddenly, he glared fiercely at Chu Lu and roared in grief and indignation, "Demoness, you actually dared to set me up? I will kill you! I will kill you! I will definitely kill you!" He was about to rush up and risk his life. Wan Renjie and the other 2 behind Chu Lu were furious and wanted to stop him. Chu Lu stopped the 3 of them with one hand. She puffed out her chest and asked proudly, "You dare to touch me?" Although her body was frail, the aura she exuded at this moment was inviolable and inviolable. There was no trace of her delicate appearance from before. Instead, she exuded the bearing of a supreme master. Even though Li Ju's mind had already sunk into madness, he could still feel the mountain-like pressure and the pressure that was strong enough to threaten his life. He stopped abruptly and said angrily, "Why wouldn't I dare to touch you? Why wouldn't I dare to touch you?" The more he spoke, the angrier he got. He was angry that he was actually frightened by the little girl in front of him. He walked forward step by step and said fiercely, "Tell me, you caused me to be in this state. Why wouldn't I dare to touch you?" Chu Lu sneered and looked at him walking forward with a cold gaze. She said with some disdain, "Putting aside the fact that I have the strength of a supreme martial artist and you don't have the ability to touch me, I will fulfill your wish just now. Didn't you want to know my name? Let me tell you, my surname is Chu, I am Chu Lu. My brother is the Tribulation Sword Master. You dare to touch me?" Li Ju was instantly stunned. Everyone in the hall was also stunned. Chu Lu, the sister of the Tribulation Sword Master. Chu Yang being the Tribulation Sword Master was no secret in the Li clan. Of course, everyone knew this. When they heard this, especially the last sentence, they were still shocked. Many of them thought, if the Grand Duke really loses his mind and acts rashly, we must quickly stop him. If he really hurts the sister of the Tribulation Sword Master, then the Li clan would really be finished. Not to mention other things, once Imo Tianji left, the Li clan's last hope would be gone. The entire Li clan would be at a loss. The entire clan would die without a burial place. Li Ju stood there stuttering, unable to advance or retreat. His eyes were also bloodshot, reaching the legendary state of blood in the pupils. Although he had reached this legendary state, he still didn't dare to take a step forward. He could only gasp for breath. He knew that if he dared to take a step forward now, he would probably be dismembered by his own family members before he could even do anything. He didn't step forward. Instead, Chu Lu'er took a step forward and said coldly, "Let me tell you, my uncle is Yu Lingxue, and my aunt is Feng Yuro. You dare to touch me?" Bullying others with her power. This little girl was obviously bullying others with her power now. Everyone's mind was blown again. Moon Breeze. 2 peak-level supreme martial artists. Oh my god, this girl's backing is so strong, so strong. Li Ju's head was full of cold sweat. He couldn't help but take a step back. "You are bullying others with your power." To be able to force the first successor of a big clan to say, "You are bullying others with your power." If it was in the past, it would be the biggest joke in the world, so funny that it was unbelievable. But now, it really existed. Chu Le took another step forward and said coldly, "Bullying others with my power? I am bullying you with my power. What can you do? Do you dare to touch me?" Chapter 1499. Li Ju's face was ghastly pale. He didn't even seem to know how to tremble. His eyes rolled back. He was both angry and aggrieved. He was also angry but didn't dare to flare up. He also felt a little wronged. He was almost about to faint on the spot. "You actually want to touch me?" Chu Le had never been one to settle things peacefully. In this aspect, she was greatly influenced by her master Wu Jueqing. Otherwise, she wouldn't have dealt with Li Ju in such a way out of disgust. If you hit someone, you have to beat them to death. You have to be fearsome. This was her master's teaching. Kind people will be bullied. Any provocation and conspiracy must be blasted to death. To eliminate future troubles. This was her big brother's teaching. How could she let Li Ju off now? She took another step forward and smiled. "Right, my master is the poison doctor Wu Jueqing. You dare to touch me?" All the supreme martial artists of the Li clan were petrified. Damn it, this girl's background wasn't finished yet. Each one was scarier than the last. This time, even Li Chuanhua's countenance changed a little. She was actually Wu Jueqing's disciple. Right? He heard that Wu Jueqing had once taken a girl with the surname Chu as his disciple. Her name seemed to be Chu Lu. That was a super big shot who had dominated the world for 40,000 years. If we were to really talk about seniority, this little girl in front of me is almost unparalleled in this world. She seems to be at least 2 or 3 generations older than me. At this moment, Li Ju was already on the verge of breaking down. Even his mind was in a daze, Chu, or snorted. She raised her little nose and said, "My sister's masters are Ning Tianya and Bu Lu Qing. You dare to touch me?" He was extremely happy. That little girl also wants to be my sister-in-law. Be obedient and be my sister. All right, even Li Chuanhua was dizzy. If they really offended this little girl, not to mention the allied army outside, just the people that this little girl mentioned would come together. The Li clan could only end up with a tragic fate of having their throats slit. What kind of people were these names? How many top experts in the entire heavens couldn't be offended? The little girls registered their names one by one. It seemed that other than the Dharma Supreme, everyone else had basically gathered here. If Li Ju was cheating his father just now, he was cheating his ancestors and the entire Li clan now. Li Ju, who was originally on the verge of breaking down, would completely break down now. With a plop, he sat on the ground. He just sat on the ground in a daze, his eyes glazed over. It was obvious that he was thinking about something. Li Chuanhua sighed deeply. What a disgrace. With a slap, he sent Li Ju flying into a corner of the hall. Li Chuanhua was so disgusted that he didn't even have the heart to kill Li Ju anymore. It was really killing with dirty one's hands. He didn't even say a word about punishing him, but everyone clearly knew. Li Wuhua. From now on, Li Ju and his father would be in the entire Li family. There was no longer a place for them to stand. My family is unfortunate to have such an unfilial grandson. I'm sorry to have embarrassed myself in front of you, Li Chuanhua said with a long sigh. Chu Le smiled and said, "You're too polite, elderly. It's normal to have a few prodigals in a big family." She smiled gently. He said, "This matter is most likely due to my daughter's lack of self-restraint, but it is due to her innate temperament. Please don't take offense, elderly. I just can't stand those lecherous fellows. I have to punish every one of them that I see." Chu Le said, "When the Li clan is on the brink of destruction, it's even more unbearable for someone to have lecherous thoughts at this juncture." "You're right, Mississippi," Li Chuanhua clicked his tongue in wonder. The little girl looked to be at most 14 or 15 years old, but the words that she said and the things that she did were rare even for an experienced martial artist. Chu Le smiled sweetly and said, "You're too polite, old master. If this grandson of yours can really make my elder brother, uncle, aunt and teacher not dare to utter a word, It's fine for me to be his concubine. This sentence made the corners of Li Chuanhua's mouth twitch. The other supreme martial artists of the Li clan even had the urge to faint collectively. This little grand aunt really knew how to slap people in the face. Her way of doing things was too brazen. Look at how easily she said it, making the Tribulation Sword Master, Tribulation, Yu Lingxue, Feng Yuro and Wu Jueqing not dare to utter a word. Damn it, looking at the current situation, even if all the great clans were to band together and the law enforcement officers were to work together, they still wouldn't be able to do it. Li Chuanhua smiled bitterly and said, "Miss, you must be joking. But I wonder where your teacher and your uncle and aunt are now." When Elder Li asked this, everyone's eyes lit up instead. That's right, now that this little girl had appeared here, if these three experts that basically no one in the upper three heavens dared to offend were also here, wouldn't the Li clan's crisis be easily resolved? At least they wouldn't have to face the crisis of the entire clan being annihilated, right? My uncle and aunt are naturally overseeing the Chu clan in the southeast, but the clan can't do without them. Chu Lu was clever. How could she not know what they were planning? She smiled sweetly and said, "My teacher isn't here either. To be honest, I don't know where he is now either. I just heard that the war here is very fun, so I came to look for Mo Tianji to play. Very fun, come to play, this time, not to mention the other supreme martial artists of the Li clan." Even Li Chuanhua was speechless. Everyone in the clan had already fucked up to this point, and this little girl actually thought that it was very fun and wanted to come and play. Li Chuanhua smiled helplessly and said, "I see. I'll get someone to send you to military advisor Mo right away." "Thank you, old master." Chu Lur chuckled. She regained her original age and the most innocent smile of a girl. Lur's impression of this old man, Li Chuanhua, was still quite good. This was because everyone's eyes were shining with hope, hoping that their teacher could lend a helping hand to the Li clan. However, only Li Chuanhua's eyes didn't have any utilitarian colors. Watching Chu Lur and the rest leave, Li Chuanhua let out a long sigh. Before life and death, strength of character is important. Before benefits, perseverance is important. Before death, filial piety is important. Before beauty, character is important. Our Li clan has lasted for a whole 10,000 years and finally reached the end of its rope. How can there be no reason for this? The current clan leader is a traitor, and the first successor is even frivolous, lustful, and a coward. It is truly the most miraculous thing in the world that such a clan can continue to survive. No one in the Li clan dared to speak. Li Chuanhua looked at Li Wubua and Li Ju with extreme disgust. He said, "Expel these two from my reserve team and put them in the first wave of battle formation. Since they're going to die sooner or later, let them do their last bit for the clan. That way, they won't have to die in my hands." Everyone wanted to say something, but Li Chuanhua had already shouted, "Take them away. Don't let me see them again. They don't deserve it." Two elders helped the pale-faced Li Ju and Li Wubua to their feet and helped them out. This time, both father and son had their heads lowered. No one could see the deep-rooted hatred in their eyes. Mo Tianji was standing under a plum blossom tree in the courtyard. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the falling snow in the sky. "Xin, we should really let Xie Danqiong take a good look at these snowflakes." Mo Tianji suddenly thought of something and said, What are you talking about? What's so nice about these snowflakes? They're all the same." Ao Shiyun was a little confused. "Xie Danqiong is looking at viburnum flowers every day now. They're not as nice as these. They're the same, different. They're completely different." My mind was clear just now. After looking at over 30,000 snowflakes, I discovered something very interesting. Mo Tianji chuckled and said, "I observed over 30,000 snowflakes. There's actually no two snowflakes that are exactly the same shape." Ao Shiyun was very interested. "Really? This is quite interesting." After saying that, he also looked over. Mo Tianji said, "From this, it can be inferred that the entire northwest region has been snowing nonstop for tens of thousands of years. There are at least trillions of snowflakes falling every moment. However, since ancient times, there's no two snowflakes that are exactly the same shape. In other words, snowflakes have an infinite number of shapes and sizes. The wonders of heaven and earth are truly breathtaking. Mo Tianji's eyes were deep in thought as he sighed softly. Ao Shiyun looked for a while and indeed, he didn't find any similarities. He said, "That's true. However, this isn't a big deal, is it? They're just snowflakes. They can be turned into nothingness with a casual pinch." Mo Tianji smiled. "You still don't understand what I mean. To us, snowflakes can indeed be turned into nothingness with a casual pinch. However, you should know that our double heavens continent may be something that can be turned into nothingness with a casual pinch in the eyes of some people." Ao Shiyun's expression was a little confused. "What? This time, I really don't understand what you're talking about." Mo Tianji chuckled. "I'm just thinking, in the eyes of others, is our double heavens continent just a piece of falling snowflake? Falling from a high altitude until landing is the end. This process may be long or it may be very short. To us, it may be tens of thousands of years. However, in the eyes of some powerful people, is it just a blink of an eye? At this moment, we're on this tiny piece of snowflake. As we fall, we don't even feel it. We're still carrying out that laughable battle of life and death in the eyes of others." Ao Shiyun was getting more and more confused. He only felt that Mo Tianji was crazy and talking nonsense. He said, "Forget it, your theory is too profound. You've really impressed me. How can there be such a thing? Even if the double heavens were folded, it wouldn't be a piece of snowflake." Mo Tianji chuckled and didn't refute. However, his expression became even more serious. He was deep in thought. Not a piece of snowflake? Once the double heavens collapsed, in this universe, what was the difference between it and a piece of snowflake? It was silent, but there were footsteps coming from afar. "Someone's here," Mo Tianji said softly and turned around with Ao Shiyun. At this moment, Chu Lu was in front and she stepped through the door. Chapter 1500. Her pure white little face was like a slender and elegant little white flower that had suddenly bloomed in this snowstorm, revealing infinite elegance and infinite freshness. The moment she appeared, the entire courtyard suddenly lost its color. Mo Tianji was stunned. He only saw that infinitely pure little face suddenly walk out from the snow and barge into his field of vision. The endless falling snow in the sky also seemed to disappear at the same time. For some reason, a poem appeared in his mind. "Before you appeared, the world was beautiful. Even the snowflakes had infinite shapes. When you appeared, everything in the world lost its color." Someone at the side said, "Military advisor Mo, this lady is looking for you." Mo Tianji didn't hear it. The moment Chu Lu entered, she saw a tall young man dressed in white standing under a plum blossom tree. His hair was as black as ink and his eyes were deep. With his hands behind his back, it was as if he had the whole world in his hands. It was an unfathomable posture. It was a profound posture with infinite confidence. It was as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. She couldn't help but be stunned. "You are Mo Tianji?" Chu Lu asked curiously. "I am Mo Tianji. And you are?" Mo Tianji only felt an inexplicable heat on his face. He hurriedly sorted out his messy thoughts and laughed softly. He quickly calmed down and the flush on his face disappeared. "I am Chu Lu." Chu Lu tilted her head and asked, "You should know me, right? Has my big brother ever mentioned me to you?" "So you are Chu Lu, little sister Lu." The one who spoke wasn't Mo Tianji, but Ao Shiyun. Wuxia exclaimed in amazement and said, "I've heard so much about you. Your big brother often mentions your name to the point where we're almost getting calluses on our ears. But after meeting you today, I know that your big brother really doesn't know how to speak. He didn't even say 1/10 of how beautiful you are. He really doesn't know how to use adjectives. His vocabulary is really too poor." Ao Xieyun laughed. "I am Ao Xieyun. Ao as in Ao Xieyun, Xie as in Ao Xieyun, Yun as in Ao Xieyun. Your big brother has mentioned me to you, right?" Chu Lu chuckled. I did. "So, you are that Ao Shiyun who has many wives and concubines, is extremely lecherous, is extremely stingy, and is extremely greedy for money. Yet, You are very cute and very worthy of being friends with. I have really heard of you. I have often heard of your name and those deeds of yours. Ao Shiyun's radiant smile froze on his face in an instant. Mo Tianji didn't know why, but he felt extremely comfortable at this moment. A feeling of schadenfreude arose in his heart. He laughed and said, that's right, that's right. He's that Ao Shiyun who has many wives and concubines, is extremely lecherous, extremely stingy, greedy, and petty. Your evaluation of him is right on point. It's too graphic. This time, Mo Tianji deliberately omitted the words very cute and worthy of being friends with. Ao Shiyun's face turned completely green. He said in shame, what is this? Who would introduce their brothers like that? Wait for the boss to come back. I will definitely settle the score with him. I rarely feel like dying. I am so embarrassed in front of my little sister. My image is completely ruined. Suddenly he said excitedly, oh right, what did your big brother say about Mo Tianji? You have a belly full of evil ideas, a belly full of scheming, and a belly full of schemes. Chu tilted her head in thought. Mo Tianji immediately became nervous. How is he scheming? My big brother said that Mo Tianji is very scary. He eats people without spitting out their bones. He is sinister and vicious. He hides a knife in his smile. Yet he is worthy of being entrusted with a brother's life. He is the most terrifying enemy when he is an enemy, but he is the most reliable brother when he is a friend. Chu said with a smile. This was indeed Chu Yang's accurate evaluation of Mo Tianji. It was the combination of their understanding of each other. Mo Tianji only felt that his entire body was warm and comfortable. Although there were derogatory comments such as very scary. He eats people without spitting out their bones. He is sinister and vicious. He hides a knife in his smile. Mo Tianji was still very satisfied. Mo Tianji, am of course that kind of person. But I will never treat my friends that way. Ao Shiyun clearly felt different and was very uncomfortable. He said in a strange tone, you don't know. This guy is not much better than me. Didn't your big brother tell you that Mo Tianji took in concubines before marrying? He is lustful and shameless? Chu Le wrinkled her nose and said, Mo Tianji does indeed have 2 concubines. But those 2 concubines, if Ao Shiyun was in Mo Tianji's place, I'm afraid they would have been killed long ago. Am I right? Ao Shiyun and Mo Tianji were both stunned. Ao Shiyun said, did your big brother also say this? Chu smiled slyly. Not entirely. This is the conclusion I came to after my big brother said it. She looked at Ao Shiyun from the corner of her eyes. This is the conclusion I came to after seeing you. Ao Shiyun touched his nose and smiled bitterly. He was completely convinced now. She was a super genius problem girl. Mo Tianji's eyes shone. He had a new evaluation of the girl in front of him. Smart. She could see the problem clearly and hit the nail on the head. Indeed, if it was anyone else, Mo Tianji's 2 so-called concubines would have been killed countless times. Not to mention that they had lived until now and lived a luxurious life. Ver is here? Rui Butong exclaimed in surprise and somersaulted out. When he saw Chu Lu, he was even happier. Ha! I was sleeping when I heard your voice. I came out to take a look. It was indeed you. Brother Butong. Chu smiled warmly. You still love somersaulting. Rui Butong laughed and came forward affectionately. He was about to hold Chu Lu's hand and invite her in. Suddenly, Mo Tianji took a step forward and stood in front of Rui Butong. He smiled warmly and said, come in quickly. It's so cold outside. Ha! It's snowing so heavily. Why are you here alone? He turned around and let Chu Lu in. However, he seemed to have, intentionally or unintentionally, pushed Rui Butong's buttocks outside. The pitiful Rui Butong only showed his face once after he came out. After that, he didn't even get a chance to show his face again. Mo Tianji had already invited Chu Lu into the hall. What's going on? Did Mo Tianji go crazy? Ao Xie-yun looked at the depressed one Renjie and the other 2 and muttered. It was obvious that there were 4 of them. Emononji actually said, "Why did you come here alone?" He actually chose to ignore the other three people behind. Ao Xie and Rui Butong didn't think much about it. They hurriedly went forward to receive them and exchanged names with Wan Renjie and the other two. When they heard that they were Chu Yang's old acquaintances, everyone became even more affectionate. They chatted and entered the hall. After hearing Chu Le's intention, Emotionji frowned and comforted her. Don't worry. Elder Wu hasn't participated in the battle these few days. If Elder Wu had participated in the battle, we would have immediately received news. We will definitely get the news as soon as possible. Currently, we should be observing the situation. To be honest, a battle of this level might not be able to attract the interest of someone of your master's level. Emotionji pondered for a while and said, I think that Elder Wu is most likely with your big brother right now. Chu Lu was surprised. Why do you say that? Emotionji said, you also know your master's identity and your big brother's identity. You also know what your master cares about the most. Since your master knows that your big brother has come to the northwest this time, how can he not go and ask clearly? He smiled lightly. Those things are the most important thing in your life. This is your master's greatest obsession. Naturally, he wouldn't lose his composure in front of his disciple and leave you for the time being. This is a logical thing to do. Chu Le's mind was very clear. She instantly let go of her worries. Emotionji's analysis was very logical. She couldn't help but be unconvinced. It was even more similar to Wu Jueqing's character. Chu Le felt that it made sense. She couldn't help but admire him. Indeed, this should be the case. Why didn't I think of it? Big Brother Mo is amazing. As expected of the master of calculation and manipulation. Emotionji smiled warmly. Actually, you should have thought of it too. It's just that those involved can't see clearly. Of course, if I were in your position, I definitely wouldn't have thought of it. That's because I'm worried and confused. Yes. That's it. Chu Le was relieved. She let out a long breath. I've been so worried these few days that I couldn't sleep. Emotionji said gently, are you sleepy now? I'm indeed a little sleepy. Chu Le nodded honestly. You don't know how worried I was these few days, Emotionji chuckled. Since you're here with Big Brother Mo here, you can have a good night's sleep and have a good rest. Don't worry, once we have news of your master, we'll inform you. Chu Le said with relief, okay, then I'll go and sleep for a while. If there's news, inform me immediately. Once she relaxed, she really felt that she couldn't keep her eyes open. Emotionji got up and sent her off. He was very elegant, very distant and very patient as he sent Chu Le to the guest room. Ao Xie Yun and Rui Butong looked at each other. Emotionji was too much, wasn't he? Little sister came here and the two of us didn't even have time to talk before she was sent to sleep. What was the meaning of this? Just as they were about to express their dissatisfaction, they saw Emotionji come out and put up 2 fingers. Sure, her is already asleep. You guys should speak softer. Sigh, a little girl like her must be really tired these few days. If there's anything, let's talk about it in a few days. Yes, all of you can go out now and do what you need to do. Go quickly. He actually pushed and shoved the few of them out. Emotionji followed them out and closed the door. Then he stood under the plum blossom tree with a gentle smile on his face and continued to observe the falling snow, full of the trajectory of the universe. He actually didn't intend to say anything more to Ao Xie Yun and the others. He didn't intend to say a single word. The group of them was completely speechless. They felt that Emotionji was really very strange today. Too strange. What was wrong with this guy? Chapter 1501. Wan Renjie and the other two had only interacted with Emotionji for a short period of time. Naturally, they had no right to speak. Ao Xie Yun and Rui Butong understood Emotionji very well. They could even say how many hairs he had on his body. But now, they were also confused. Just as they were about to ask, Emotionji waved his hand and said reservedly, I'm thinking of a strategy to defeat the enemy. Don't disturb me. Keep quiet. Everyone was speechless. Was he really thinking of a strategy to defeat the enemy? It didn't seem like it. It felt a little like that. Of course, Mo Tianji wasn't thinking of any grand strategy to defeat the enemy. Not even a little bit. But he didn't think of anything else. In fact, no one knew what he was thinking. Even he didn't know. At this moment, the master of calculation and manipulation only felt that there were thousands of thoughts in his mind. But they receded like the tide. When he calmed down and wanted to sort out his complicated emotions, he realized that there was nothing in his mind. All his thoughts had disappeared. Such a strange situation had never happened to Mo Tianji in his life. He felt that this situation was very novel. He was very surprised. He even felt a little fearful and expectant. When all his distracting thoughts disappeared, a face appeared clearly in his mind. It was a pretty face that was delicate, smart, and strong. Her eyes were lively, strong, and stubborn. But there was a trace of weakness that made people want to protect her. The owner of this face was so delicate and pitiful. But there was also a pride that didn't rely on anyone. Such a girl was very special. Very special. At least, Mo Tianji had never seen such a girl before. Very special. For the first time, Mo Tianji's heart was filled with gentleness and desire to protect her. This feeling of wanting to protect her. Other than his sister Mo Qingwu, this was the first time it appeared on other girls. It didn't even appear on the two girls or Xiao Shui in Tianji City. It was just that the feeling was a little different. Towards his sister, he cared for her wholeheartedly. He spoiled her and indulged her completely. However, towards this little girl who suddenly appeared, Mo Tianji had a trace of dominance in addition to spoiling and indulging her. Selfish protection? It was just a slight difference, but it was already a completely different result. As Mo Tianji thought about this, a faint sense of perplexity arose in his heart. He even felt a little worried about personal gains and losses. He just stood there in a daze. His entire body was motionless. This was the case for a long time. At first, Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong were still accompanying him. They had to fulfill their duties as bodyguards. Later on, they simply ignored him. The two of them brought out a lot of food and wine, and ate and drank with one Renjie and the others to their heart's content. Bodyguards are humans too. They have to eat too. If I can't give you a bodyguard, you won't eat. Besides, we didn't leave. She was eating right in front of you, and she even asked you to catch up with her. Besides, it's true that we're your bodyguards. But if it weren't for our brotherhood, you wouldn't have been able to afford to hire bodyguards like us. While they were drinking, they called Mo Tianji a few times. However, Mo Tianji, who was in a daze, didn't hear them at all. Everyone only knew that he was considering an infinitely deep and infinitely serious problem. No one dared to rashly disturb him. Even the volume of their voices had been lowered by a lot. According to Ao and Rui, once great trickster Mo thought of a problem, he would definitely not give up if he couldn't think of a solution. Once, he was deliberating on a plan but couldn't form it after a long time. He didn't sleep for many nights and was extremely haggard. He also fell into a daze like this. The two brothers kindly served him a bowl of ginseng tea and asked him to rest for a while. However, they attracted a thunderous scolding, saying that they had disturbed his thinking and that the two of them had messed up a matter that was clearly about to have a solution. Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong were so angry that they almost burst their bellies. From then on, the two of them didn't ask about Mo Tianji's days anymore. He deserved to die from exhaustion. At most, they would send him some ginseng tea, bird's nest, and other nourishing items regularly. They would leave them there and leave if he wanted to eat them or not. Halfway through drinking, Li Xiongtu also joined in. However, he felt that the cup was too small. It was rare for him to be so happy. He simply hugged a wine jar that was almost half the height of a person and competed with Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong in drinking. Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong were instantly shocked by this delightful attitude of drinking wine and eating meat. It wasn't that he hadn't hugged a wine jar to drink before, but he really hadn't hugged such a big wine jar to drink before. At this moment, Li Xiongtu's heroic spirit was soaring and his ambition was soaring. This made Ao Shiyun and Rui Butong's blood boil. How could they be willing to show weakness? They rushed up with reddened eyes, determined to beat this guy down. Rui Badong straightforwardly suggested that since they were going to drink in big mouthfuls, they should seal each other's cultivation before drinking. What kind of alcohol tolerance would it be if they only relied on their cultivation? They must drink to their heart's content today. This suggestion was unanimously approved by everyone. Therefore, even Wan Renjie and the other two brothers sealed their dantian in an instant. Everyone drank and drank to their heart's content. Chu Er slept very soundly. When she opened her eyes again, it was already midnight. She could only hear the thunderous snoring outside. Occasionally, there were also some ravings. Just as she opened the door, she was almost knocked over by the smell of alcohol that greeted her. She covered her nose and looked over. She saw that on the steps outside, there were 7 big men lying in a mess. Most of them were familiar faces. The 5 of them were Ao Shiyun, Rui Badong, Wan Renjie, Cheng Duing, and Bao Buhuan. As for the last big and tall charcoal head, she didn't recognize him. All the big men were lying on the ground. Everyone's body was in a rather strange posture. Some were twisted, some were curled up. The strangest one was the charcoal head. His 2 feet were placed high on the steps, but his head was at the bottom of the steps in the snow. Half of his head was already buried in the snow. As he panted, breathed again, and breathed again. From time to time, some alcohol would come out of his mouth with a gurgling sound. The area around his head was already sparkling. The alcohol that came out had already been frozen due to the cold, and half of his head was frozen in the snow. Yet, he could still sleep with thunderous snoring. This ability was indeed surprising. As for the other 5 people, their postures were also similar. Anyway, there were all kinds of weird postures. Each of them had their own merits. Chu was really amazed by this. Chu floated up very carefully. She flew over the head of a drunkard and entered the courtyard. She couldn't help but feel a little strange. Where did Emotianji go? Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong were drinking here, and they were even drunk. Emotianji shouldn't be too far away. Under the plum blossom tree, there was a huge pile of snow that looked like a human figure suddenly shaking. With a whoosh, the snow scattered and revealed a person inside. He was tall and elegant. It was Emotianji, who she thought had disappeared. Why are you awake so early? You've been tired out these few days. Why don't you sleep a little longer? Rest well. Chu Le looked at him with a little surprise. So you're not drunk? She thought to herself, big brother's brothers are really weird. The few over there drank themselves unconscious, but the one in front of me directly buried himself in the snow. Is it easier to think things through by burying oneself in the snow? Yes, I never let myself get drunk. Emotianji smiled slightly. This is a very good habit. Chu Lu praised him without hiding anything. I hate drunk people. They stink and are in a daze. They really don't know what they're doing. Yet they still think that they're very manly. My big brother has never been like this. Emotianji's eyes lit up. He said, yes, drunk people are really annoying. Chu Lu's eyes lit up. She said, you think so too. The 2 of them seemed to have found a common topic. So, they wantonly talked about the dangers of getting drunk. Emotianji quoted from the classics and quoted from a wide range of sources. So, the matter of a man getting drunk had already risen to the level of being angered by both heaven and man in a short while. Men who get drunk often are unreliable. Men who get drunk often make people feel insecure. Men who get drunk often make mistakes easily. Men who get drunk often are very rude. Men who get drunk often can't do great things. Men who get drunk often have the tendency to hit their wives. They are definitely not ideal partners. Men who get drunk often, Emotianji spoke very elegantly and methodically. He chatted happily with Chu Lu. They were getting along better and better. Without leaving a trace, through the matter of getting drunk, he had intentionally or unintentionally degraded Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong, these 2 good brothers of his. Then, even though he hadn't mentioned a single word about himself from the beginning to the end, he had unknowingly raised his image infinitely. Because I don't get drunk. What a simple, straightforward, and practical reason. But Mo Tianji still made a mistake. A mistake that was quite low level for him. Chu was talking about Chu Yang. My big brother is so good. At first, Mo Tianji listened with a smile. Occasionally, he would agree, praise, but Chu Lu'er couldn't stop talking about Chu Yang. That kind of worship for Chu Yang seeped into her bones. That kind of unlimited closeness, that kind of unconditional trust, it was simply worship. He was simply a god. The more Mo Tianji listened, the more sour he felt in his heart. He also didn't know where this sour feeling had come from. Mo Jianghu had said countless good things about Chu Yang in front of him. She had worshipped him and was close to him. However, Mo Tianji didn't feel this sour feeling even though he was angry and unhappy. It was this inexplicable sour feeling that caused him to say almost subconsciously, actually, Chu Yang isn't that good. This bastard is also a lecher. He cheated so many women to be loyal to him. He even cheated my sister. He's a beast. Chapter 1502. Mo Tianji knew that he shouldn't have said that. He was already scolding himself in his heart. I've always been able to keep my composure. Why can't I keep my composure today? However, Chu Lu was already indignant. She flew into a rage and looked like she was going to start a fight if they didn't get along. Great trickster Mo, who was usually full of schemes, was instantly at a loss. He hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. I was exaggerating a little just now. Actually, Chu Yang isn't that. Sigh, even though it's consensual, Chu Yang is also very helpless. Being liked by so many women, I'm just feeling indignant for my sister. Who asked me to be her brother? Little sister Lur, you have to understand. You're also her sister, right? As he said that, he sighed deeply. He secretly looked at Chu Lu. Seeing that the little girl was still angry, he gritted his teeth and said against his conscience, actually, you can't blame Chu Yang for being a beast. This man is really too outstanding. When he said that, great trickster Mo almost vomited. He only felt that his heart and organs were all tangled up into a ball. Since when had he ever said something that went against his conscience? What the hell was wrong with him today? This sentence is really heartless. Chu Lu's anger turned into joy. She said, how can I not understand that only mediocre people won't be jealous of them? It's very normal for people to be jealous of my brother. My brother is just so outstanding. Actually, my brother's excellence is obvious to all. Which woman wouldn't like such an outstanding man? As the saying goes, beauties love heroes. Sigh, if I wasn't my brother's sister, I would also want to marry him. Now, it's going to be taken advantage of by another woman. Mo Tianji's heart instantly felt as if it was being cut into pieces. He also cut Chu Yang into pieces. He thought to himself, if you become Qing Wu's sister, won't you be my sister? Then won't I become your brother? However, he had a warm smile on his face. Chu Yang is indeed so outstanding that all men are jealous of him. However, they mostly admire him. How can someone be so outstanding? It's really an honor to be friends with him. Chu Lu was beaming with joy. She was in high spirits and nodded vigorously to express her agreement. She said, isn't that so? Sometimes, I also find it very strange. My brother is only a few years older than me. How can he know so much? So knowledgeable and multi-talented? There was more. In this world, there seemed to be nothing that he didn't understand or couldn't do. This was something he would never do. He was simply omnipotent. How can there be such a perfect person in this world? In this world, there's absolutely nothing my big brother can't do. Mo Tianji nodded repeatedly. Yes, yes. I also admire Chu Yang's ability. We often hang out together. As the saying goes, one is marked by the company one keeps. Actually, Chu Lu chuckled. She said reservedly, yes, my big brother is so enviable. Mo Tianji was crying in his heart. Big sister, that's not what I meant. However, he said, yes, that's too right. Mo Tianji suddenly felt that he might suffer an internal injury at any time. I really have to hand it to him. My own little sister is so devoted to him. His own little sister is also so devoted. Why can't I see what's so good about that guy? I don't dare to say anything bad about him in front of my own little sister. Otherwise, Jianghu would immediately fall out with me. Now, I don't even dare to say anything bad about him in front of his little sister. This young lady will also fall out with me. And fall out with me as soon as I say anything. She falls out faster and fiercer than my little sister. Could it be that lolis are popular in this world? Is there still a place to reason in this world? Is there still justice? Could it be that I, Motng, the master of calculation and manipulation, have to go against my conscience and suck up to Chu Yang? They were both brothers, but why was the difference in treatment so big? It was too tragic. Motng, what's wrong with you today? Are you having a stroke? Didn't you always say that Chu Yang wasn't much? Xie Yun's sarcastic voice sounded. It turned out that this guy had already sobered up. With such a good show in front of him, how could he not join in? Nonsense. Motng reprimanded sternly, Xie Yun, your attitude is wrong. Our big brother Chu Yang is our common big brother. If we don't even acknowledge him, how can we work together in the future? My admiration for big brother is endless. How can you, Xie Yun, drive a wedge between us with just a few words? Chu Le's eyes narrowed. She chuckled happily and said, Big brother Mo, you're absolutely right. My big brother is right. That Xie Yun's character is not good. He actually speaks ill of others behind their backs. My big brother has good self-restraint. How is this person's character not good? It's simply too bad. Motng echoed, yes, yes, yes. Xie Yun's character is indeed too bad. Too bad. In an instant, Xie Yun was in a mess. What's wrong with me? How is my character not good? It seems that I have just spoken the truth. You, Motng, have clearly scolded Chu Yang more than once for abducting your younger sister. And you call him a beast. So, I haven't spoken the truth yet. How is it that my character is not good now? How is my character not good again? What did I say just now? How did I drive a wedge between us? Who said I was driving a wedge between us? I'm so wronged. His heart was tangled to the extreme in an instant. Turning his grief into strength, Xie Yun kicked Rui Butong twice. Get up. Drink to death, you pig. Rui Butong cried out in pain and crawled up. Xie Yun kicked Li Xiongtu again. With a loud thud, he said, Get up. You get up too. Motng sighed and said, Look, once he's angry, he takes it out on his own brother. He kicked so hard. If he only did this to his own brother, everyone would be too embarrassed to say anything. But he actually hit an outsider. I don't even know how many times I've helped him clean up his mess. Chu Le said disdainfully, That's why I said his character is bad. Today, seeing is believing. It's better to meet him in person than to hear about him. It was originally a very complimentary sentence, but now it was used here. That meant Xie Yun stiffened and was stunned. In an instant he had already been beaten black and blue. I'm already very peaceful, okay? Didn't I just kick him twice? I was drunk last time. You guys threw me directly into the fire to be burned. Rui Butong was kicked. He jumped up and said angrily, Why did you kick me? Do you want to be beaten up? Xie Yun was stunned. Seeing that someone actually ignored him, Rui Butong pounced on him in anger. In an instant they were in a tussle. Look, he's so rough. Motng shook his head and sighed. What can't brothers talk nicely about? Chu Le agreed. She said, Yes, but what Brother Butong did was wrong. It's just a disagreement between brothers. Is there a need to hit each other? Motng got her approval. The gloominess in his heart instantly disappeared. He said with a smile, These two people are just like that. You'll get used to it slowly when you see more of them. I've been like that too. Chu Le smiled happily. Among so many people, Big Brother Mo is still the most gentlemanly. Motng chuckled and said modestly, You're too kind. I still have to learn from Big Brother Chu Yang on this. Compared to him, I'm still very far away. I'm still very far away. Chu nodded her head honestly. Yes, I think so too. However, although you're not as good as my big brother, you're not that bad either. Continue to work hard. You might be able to catch up to my big brother. Mo Tianji was instantly hurt again. He almost burst into tears. Girl, I'm just being humble, okay? Do you know what humility is? However, Chu Lu was thinking, this Mo Tianji, why does he always go along with what I say? Could it be? When she thought of this, a blush suddenly flashed across her fair face. She thought, I still have to ask Big Brother about this. He's an understanding person. He'll definitely tell me how to deal with this. Time passed quietly. The second day, Li Chunbo personally came to look for Mo Tianji. Military advisor Mo, I've exhausted all the resources in the Li clan but only managed to find these. Do you think they're still suitable? Li Chunbo sighed. The Li clan had mobilized all the resources in the clan but only managed to find about 1/3 of the materials on the list. As a result, they had far more purple crystals than they needed. However, they didn't have most of the souls of the purple crystal and other metals. Some of them were too high-end and couldn't be found at all. However, there were also some that were too low-end. In other words, they were the so-called goods from the mainland. The Li clan usually didn't care about them at all. Of course, that was why they didn't have any stock. It was already too late to search for them now. It's still too little. After Mo Tianji took a look, he also sighed. Especially without the most important souls of the purple crystal. That's the key to setting up the array. The terrain here isn't suitable for setting up an array in the first place. We can only rely on the powerful might of the souls of the purple crystal to forcefully reverse the terrain. Without the souls of the purple crystal, we definitely can't set up the array. Mo Tianji said, Elderly, if that's all, forgive me for not being able to help. Li Chunbo sighed disappointedly. Also, even with the souls of the purple crystal, Elderly, the things you've gathered now are still too little. Don't talk about sheltering 700,000 people, even 7,000 people might not be enough. Mo Tianji was rather exasperated and helpless. Elderly, I really can't understand and it's impossible for me to understand. The Li clan's 10,000 years of heritage can't even gather half of the things on my list? In my opinion, this is simply inconceivable. Chapter 1503. The most basic function of purple crystals is to convert them into one's strength. With so many purple crystals, why don't they quickly distribute them to the experts in the clan to absorb and keep them for numbers? Isn't that a strange thing? Li Chunbo was ashamed and speechless. He agreed wholeheartedly with Mo Tianji's words. This was what the Li clan did before this. They mined and collected purple crystals every day, but they only kept the purple crystals. In fact, only a very, very small portion of them were distributed to the experts in the clan. Most of the rest were collected and hoarded. What was the point of hoarding them? Just as Mo Tianji said, you're just a pile of dead objects here. If they were given to the experts in the clan and fully provided for their cultivation, if these purple crystals were really converted into the strength of the experts, how much less pressure would they be under today? 57 billion purple crystals was such a huge number. In terms of quantity alone, it was more than enough to pile up 1,000 middle-grade supreme martial artists. If the Li clan really had 1,000 middle-grade supreme martial artists, then wouldn't the upper three heavens have long been swept away by the clan? Such a foolish move. Mo Tianji looked up at the sky and sighed. Now that the Li clan is about to be destroyed, this huge wealth is going to fall into the pockets of others. Don't tell me that the Li clan's 10,000 years of accumulation is just to help the enemy today. This is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Mo Tianji said fiercely, almost as if he was gnashing his teeth. Li Chunbo was speechless. Every word that Mo Tianji said was extremely unpleasant to the ears, but every word he said was the truth. Thinking about the Li clan situation now, and then looking at the purple crystal hoard that was so huge that it was close to an astronomical figure, that could all be converted into the clan's own strength, Mo Tianji was so angry that he was gnashing his teeth. Li Chuanbo wanted to bang his head against the wall and die. In fact, all the super clans did this. Purple crystals were a rare resource. They were stored away for future use. They were only provided to the experts, but no clan had ever used all of these purple crystals. Because they had to leave some backup plans. This was understandable. But for a clan like the Li clan, which had accumulated billions of purple crystals, they were probably the only one in the entire continent, right? Elderly, I wonder if you've been to the purple crystal hoard? Mo Tianji said mockingly, those purple crystals underneath, perhaps they've already become moldy? Li Chuanbo's face turned purple as he panted heavily. After a very, very long time, Li Chuanbo said somewhat helplessly in despair, could it be that we really can't give it a try? Is there no room for us to even try? When he said this, he was disappointed. Secondly, it was because the descendants of the clan were not living up to their expectations. They did not have the slightest sense of the big picture. He was so short-sighted that he actually did such a stupid thing that made people not know whether to laugh or cry. And it was one of the great clans. Such a comical idiot is also one of the best in the world. The clan that he had built with his own hands, the continuation of his bloodline, was about to be completely annihilated. 3. There was clearly a chance to protect the future generations, but it was destroyed after the rise of hope. The strong impact from hope to despair made this old man seem as if he had aged a few hundred years in an instant. Right now, Li Chuanbo no longer had the demeanor of a peerless expert. Right now, he was completely disheartened. He was an old man with no will to fight. There was even a sense of boredom as if there was no joy in life. Mo Tianji sighed inwardly and turned his head away. He said, Elderly, you have lived for more than 10,000 years. Even if you don't know much about arrays, you should know the saying that the slightest mistake can lead to a huge error. This is especially true in the path of arrays. If I do as you say and force it, it will definitely be difficult for the array to be perfected. Not to mention 7,000 people, even if there are 7 of them, they will be done for because of forcing it. I will solemnly reiterate one last time. If we can obtain the soul of the purple crystal now, I can use the things you have found to set up an array and protect a portion of the Li clan's women and children, which is 7,000 of their bloodline. But if we don't have the soul of the purple crystal as the eye of the array to suppress the array, it will be difficult for the array to be completed. Then there will really be no hope. Li Chuanbo exhaled softly. Right now, the old man's heart was filled with despair. It was as if he wanted to do something with all his might. The hope of success was right in front of him, and he had already made all the preparations, yet he realized that he lacked a necessary item on the path to success. In the end, he could only give up halfway and let the hope leave him. That kind of sorrow, that kind of helplessness. The despair in Li Chuanbo's heart could no longer be described with words. In fact, even the flames of hope that had already started to burn in his eyes were gradually extinguished and dimming. Soul of the purple crystal? A clear yet pleasant voice rang out. Big brother Mo, what do you need the soul of the purple crystal for? I have it here. How many do you need? The owner of the clear and pleasant voice was naturally Chu Lu. At this moment, Mo Tianji could clearly see that Li Chuanbo's eyes suddenly lit up so brightly that one couldn't look straight at him. Then, as if a sudden burst of vitality, this old man jumped up. He jumped up and turned around, his face full of agitation and ecstasy. Looking at Chu Lu, Li Chuanbo's voice even trembled a little. Miss Chu, where do you have the soul of the purple crystal? From despair to hope, and hope to despair. But at the moment of complete despair, he had also completely grasped onto hope. Even with Li Chuanbo's composure, he was also almost on the verge of breaking down in agitation. Chu Lu smiled and said, That's right. Speaking of which, with my abilities, I can't contribute much in this battle. However, since I'm here and it just so happens that you lack that thing, I have it. It's only right for me to help. What was modesty? Was this modesty? She was the successor of the poison doctor, and yet she was modest about not being able to contribute much. What was generosity? Was this generosity? It just so happens that you lack it and I have it. I'm just lending a hand. Li Chuanbo took a deep breath. For a moment he actually had a feeling of, at the end of the road, there's a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. It was as if he had no chance of survival, but had narrowly escaped death. Mo Tianji asked, "How many do you have?" Great trickster Mo was not surprised that Chu Lu had a soul of purple crystal. After all, she was Chu Yang's most beloved younger sister. How could she not have a soul of purple crystal? What really surprised Mo Tianji was that this little girl would be so generous as to take it out. What a kind and generous lady. Such a person is really the first person I've met in my life. If it were someone else, they might not even be willing to part with a piece of purple crystal, much less a rare treasure like the soul of the purple crystal. Chu Lu asked, "Let's not talk about how many I have first. How many do you want?" What she said truly shocked both Mo Tianji and Li Chuanbo. What did this little girl mean? Could it be that I can provide as many as you want? Li Chuanbo couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. She was indeed the younger sister of the Tribulation Sword Master and the disciple of the Poison Doctor. She was really rich and imposing. What did it mean to be rich and imposing? This was what it meant to be rich and imposing. After more than 10,000 years, the old man's horizons had been broadened yet again. And it was on a little girl. In that instant, elder ancestor Li felt as if he had lived for more than 10,000 years in vain. His foundation of 10,000 years couldn't even compare to that of a 14-year-old girl. What this old man didn't know was that the souls of the purple crystal that Chu Lu had and even most of Chu Yang's own souls of the purple crystal were basically taken from the Li clan. Now that he had only returned 2 or 3 pieces, it had instead become a huge favor. Mo Tianji said, "If I had all the materials I needed to set up the array, then I would need at least 5 pieces of souls of the purple crystal to suppress the array. But now, the total number of materials is less than 1/3. Using 2 pieces of souls of the purple crystal is already more than enough." Chu said readily, "It's only 2 pieces. I was wondering how much more you'd need." With a flip of her delicate hand, 2 pieces of souls of the purple crystal with dense purple aura appeared in her palm. Li Chuanbo's lips started to tremble. Due to the limited effectiveness of the array, we can only protect 7,000 people. Elderly, you must remember that 7,000 people can only be fewer and not more. Even 1 extra person may cause the array to collapse instantly. Once the array collapses, there is absolutely no possibility of repairing it. Mo Tianji said, "Elderly, now that we have the souls of the purple crystal, I will start to set up the array. As for you, hurry and make the arrangements too." "Arrangements? What arrangements? Is there anything else that I need to prepare?" Li Chuanbo was rather distracted. Given old man Li's experience, he shouldn't have asked such an unwise question. But the repeated great sorrow and joy, hope and despair really gave this old man a headache. Firstly, due to the limitations of the array, the number of people who can enter the array is very small. The Li clan has to make a choice and decide which to protect and which not to protect. Secondly, while there is no need to worry about the safety of 7,000 people in the array, we still need to prepare food, drinks, and daily necessities. Since we are hiding and taking refuge, we will have to live in it for a long time and not come out for a relatively long time. Lastly, I must remind you that this matter should be treated as the top secret of the Li clan at present. As for how to keep the secret to the greatest extent yet still be able to filter out the people, I believe you understand the key point. Mo Tianji said, "Once this matter is publicized, this only chance of survival will cause intense internal strife and disputes within the Li clan. This is something that we must not be unaware of and guard against." Li Chuanbo came to a realization right away. He jumped up and said, "I will make the arrangements right away. We must not allow any accidents to happen. By the way, invite the 10 supreme martial artists over to help set up the array first. I don't need them to be of a high level, as long as they are absolutely trustworthy." Mo Tianji said, "There are also certain environmental requirements for setting up this array. First of all, we need to remove all the accumulated snow. The snow in this lousy place of yours is thousands of feet deep. Before she could finish speaking, Li Chuanbo had already agreed and walked off into the distance. In the next 2 days, the Li clan began to move intensely. The remaining peaceful time was already very short. Mo Tianji supervised the entire process and started to set up the array. A faint mysterious aura gathered in the sky above the Li clan. Chapter 1504. The Great Formation could only accommodate 7,000 people. The quota was obviously too small. Most of them would have to be abandoned. Li Chuan's reason to the outside world was that he wanted to quickly increase his combat power and select 7,000 young disciples for training. The veteran supreme martial artists would use the enlightenment technique to create experts to provide the clan with strength. Only talented and intelligent youths with good aptitude, strong determination and high acceptance could be selected, and so on. Li Ba Tian was one of the candidates. On the other side, Li Wuba, Li Ju and Li Ba Tian's father were all seated. Ba Tian, there should be a suitable method of security for this gathering, right? Li Wuba was indeed the former clan leader of the Li clan. He could tell the crux of this sudden training selection at a glance. He laughed and said, 2 days ago, when I was chatting with Mo Tianji and the others, Rui Badong had revealed that Mo Tianji was an expert in formations. I think so. Li Ba Tian was a little uncertain. Since there are changes after the arrangements have been made at this time, there must be a new method, and this method is definitely a battle array. And formations are Mo Tianji's specialty. And that old fool will definitely not allow Li Ju to go in as well. He is already completely disappointed in us. Li Wuba's eyes flickered for a moment. He said, the destruction of the Li clan is a foregone conclusion. This outcome is definitely irreversible. However, if the Li clan has any hope of making a comeback in the future, we must have complete control over it. When that time comes, all the old fellows, whether they should die or not, will be dead. The two of you will be the pillars of the Li clan. You will also have the highest cultivation among the youths. Didn't you say that both father and big brother will go out to battle? Elder Master obviously wants big brother to be sacrificed. Li Ba Tian was a little confused. It's not a problem for your big brother to go out to battle. I have my ways. Instead, the most important thing now is to let your elder brother enter that so-called safe place when the time comes. Li Wuba snickered. Which old bastard decided to strip me of my position as the clan leader at this critical juncture, causing all my plans to go down the drain. However, the Li clan will still be in my hands in the end. Even if I can't do it personally, there's still my son. I will connect you and your big brother with both of your souls right now. This way, as long as any one of you enters, you will be able to enter. The other person only needs to activate the device. And even if it is isolated by a special formation, it will still be able to instantly locate the location. In this way, won't it be easy to enter the secret location? When the time comes, your big brother will stay outside for the time being. If he finds an opportunity to replace Li Xiongtu, then get rid of him and replace him. Immediately activate your mental cultivation technique and lock onto your younger brother's location. Ba Tian, you are inside and you must be prepared to receive your elder brother's message. Assist them immediately. Father! The two brothers shouted. The strange body-united heart technique could only be used on a blood brother, and it would not have any effect on the person who used it. However, the person who used it would have to suffer an extremely serious backlash. Even if it was not fatal, it would cause a great loss of cultivation. His realm regressed. Now that I've lost all my authority, the outcome has already been decided. Why would I care about this little bit of backlash? I might as well help you and your brothers and pave a bright path for your hegemony. Li Wubo waved his hand coldly. Pay attention to the beginning. After a long time, Li Wubo's complexion turned sallow. His expression was dispirited and he coughed repeatedly. As he coughed, he spat out mouthfuls of blood. You two brothers must support each other. Don't let down this old man's kind intentions, Li Wubo instructed with lifeless eyes. However, There was a joyful smile on his face. In this way, even if I die in the spring, I can rest in peace. Li Ju and Li Ba Tian knelt in front of their father and cried bitterly. Day by day the days passed. On the evening of the 5th day, the great formation that Mo Tianji had set up was completed. The 7,000 elite disciples of the Li clan were all hidden inside. After everyone was confirmed to be in the formation, Mo Tianji placed the soul of the purple crystal into the eye of the formation. A dense cloud of mist rose in spirals. The 7,000 youths who were still in front of everyone just now disappeared completely in front of everyone's eyes. Li Chuanhua, the only member of the Li clan who was present to watch, clicked his tongue in wonder. He was so agitated that his face was flushed red. Under Mo Tianji's silent approval, he used all his cultivation to attack the great formation. However, he could only cause turbulence in the cloud of mist. The great formation was not damaged at all. Li Chuanhua was completely relieved. Based on his cultivation, he could at least be ranked in the top 15 in the entire upper 3 heavens. If he couldn't break the formation even if he tried, this formation would naturally be impregnable and as stable as a rock. What was left after that was only the final battle. Now that the greatest threat of clan annihilation had been eliminated, there was nothing else to worry about in this battle. On the 7th day, Chu Yang and the others left the cave where they were hiding. They came to a mountain peak that was only 1,500 miles away from the core base of the Li clan. This distance was just right for them to attack at any time and participate in the great battle. Gu Duxing and the others also came to meet them at the same time. Chu Yang and Gu Duxing were on the left and right respectively. 2 towering mountain peaks stood opposite each other. However, there was a plain between them. Or rather, it was an extremely wide road. This was undoubtedly the best route to intercept the enemy. When Chu Yang went to the opposite side to observe the terrain, he deliberately led Gu Duxing and the others over for a detailed discussion before he went back. At that time, 2 sword supremes and 1 saber supremacy worked together. They were really like the sharpest scissors, blocking the main road below and cutting off all the enemy's chances of survival. On the 8th day, without anyone noticing, the 3 Stars Divine Clan army hidden in the northeast also quietly moved forward by 1,500 miles. They were only half a day's journey away from the battlefield of the final battle. Several middle-grade supreme martial artists on the 3 Stars Divine Clan's side followed the Saint King Tan Tan deep into the enemy's territory. They directly hid on a hidden mountain peak within the battlefield and watched the battle closely. On the Alliance's side, as the days drew closer, the tense atmosphere before the great battle also became more and more intense. In the last few days, the atmosphere was so oppressive that it was almost suffocating. On the afternoon of the 8th day, the 2 8th-grade supreme martial artists from the reinforcement team of the law enforcement officers finally arrived at the Alliance's camp like stray dogs. After the 2 of them arrived, they were so exhausted that they could collapse at any time. This situation shocked all the higher-ups of the Alliance. Honorable Envoy, where are your troops? Are they still behind? Diwu Qingru asked. Although he knew that the situation was not right, he still held on to the possibility that something was wrong. No, all gone. All eaten up by the demon. The law enforcement high priest Miao Zhendong's eyes were listless. Everyone must be careful. That demon also followed us. That demon is really too scary. Everyone, please don't be deceived by his appearance. Demon? What demon? How can we be deceived? Everyone was confused. How could this guy speak so incoherently? What a waste of his cultivation as an 8th-grade supreme martial artist. After the 2 high priests rested for a while, they successively explained what had happened. Everyone finally understood. It turned out that the law enforcement officers encountered a demon and were completely slaughtered. The 2 leaders were lucky to have survived. Demon? How can there be any demon in this world? Or a humanoid demon with the strength of a middle-grade supreme martial artist? Xiao Chenyu snorted. Obviously, he was extremely impatient with the 2 high priests' words. His eyes were full of disdain as he looked at the 2 high priests. Not hiding at all. Damn it, I thought that the two of you were important figures. Who would have thought that just a small matter like this would be attributed to a demon? Why don't you just say that you met Ning Tianya, Wu Jueqing and the Tribulation Sword Master who joined forces to kill you? You fought with all your might but were defeated in the end. In the end, only the two of you managed to escape. If you said that, although I know that you are boasting, at least it is more reliable and I can still treat you as human beings. But look at the lies of these two, who would believe them, in the hundreds of thousands of years in the heavenly layer, when had there been such a powerful humanoid demon? At Xiao Qinyu's level, as one of the strongest experts in the world, he no longer needed to hide any of his emotions and thoughts. Attention was attention, disgust was disgust, like was like, and disdain was disdain. It's true. There was a humanoid demon with the strength of a middle-grade supreme martial artist and an almost indestructible body that attacked us. Miao Zhendong had been through thousands of years of experience. How could he not see the disdain in Xiao Qinyu's eyes? Even though he knew that this matter was indeed his fault, he couldn't help but feel angry. Lie to you? Do I need to lie to you? Who do you think you are that I need to lie to you? Do you think you're so great just because you're the first ancestor of the Xiao clan? Forget it, let's stop here. Let's just say it's true. Xiao Qinyu's voice was light as he said, but I still want to ask you something. Your group of people have all died, and only the two of you are left. But you finally arrived. Even if it's only the two of you, it's still considered as providing assistance along the way. But what about those people who were transferred from other places? Where did they go? He smiled sinisterly. Even if they acted separately, those people were much closer to your original position. They should have arrived a long time ago. But why haven't they arrived yet? Could it be that those people were also attacked by the humanoid demon? I just don't know if the demon that attacked them also has the strength of a middle-grade supreme martial artist. It turns out that the middle-grade supreme martial artist of the upper three heavens is already so worthless. In a few more days, won't the middle-grade supreme martial artist be walking around everywhere? Miao Zhendong was tongue-tied. He didn't know how to answer for a long time. To be honest, how would he know where those people from the other routes went? But what Xiao Qinyu said wasn't wrong at all. Those people should have arrived a long time ago. But until now, they still hadn't arrived. This was really too wrong. Last night, after applying medicine, I felt so uncomfortable that I couldn't sleep much. It was like a wound that was about to form a scar, and then the wound was soaked in salt water. That kind of feeling, itchy and painful. I just caught up on some sleep this afternoon. Gee. Chapter 1505. How would I know? Miao Zhendong mumbled, almost on the verge of breaking down. It's not like we're going the same way. Naturally, he didn't know about this. Because the development of the situation over there was also quite unexpected. It was completely out of anyone's expectations. Even if Diwu Qingru and Mo Tianji joined forces, it was still a huge variable that they definitely couldn't have predicted. The only person who had a chance to guess it was Chu Yang, but even Chu Yang wouldn't guess in that direction. That elite team of law enforcement officers, under the lead of the officers who originally belonged to Lang Yilong, was currently rushing all the way to some place in the southeast, and this team didn't suffer a huge loss of members like Great High Priest Miao's team. The team of more than 200 people only lost less than 20 people in total. No one knew what method Interrogation Officer 1 used, but after discovering that their leader didn't go and would never go, he directly abducted the entire team and ran away. By the time Miao Zhendong and the others reached the northwest, Interrogation Officer 1's team was already about to reach their destination in the southeast. With regards to such a formless and completely impossible to guess the outcome of, everyone naturally couldn't come to a conclusion even if they discussed it for a year. As they glared at each other, it was still Xiao Qinyu who waved his hand almost perfunctorily. Let's stop here and not talk about it. Let's invite the two high priests to talk about that humanoid spirit you guys encountered that has the strength of a second-grade supreme martial artist and an indestructible body. Oh, right, from what the two high priests said just now, that spirit or whatever is still chasing after you guys? The ridicule and doubt in his tone were completely undisguised, making all the supreme martial artists present feel like laughing out loud. Miao Zhendong glared angrily. Xiao Chenyu didn't care at all. The second high priest at the side hurriedly came over to smooth things over, taking the initiative to slowly narrate the experience of his team. Miao Zhendong added a few words from time to time. As the two narrated, all the supreme martial artists present, including Xiao Chenyu, finally started to have serious expressions on their faces and then turned serious. Everyone present was experienced and could easily distinguish between truth and falsehood. Although they did not believe what the two consecrated elders said because it was too absurd, and they even thought that the two consecrated elders were just making things up to shirk responsibility, after hearing their stories, everyone expressed their trust and acknowledgement of what the two consecrated elders had said. And trust and recognition meant there really was a miraculous existence that could suddenly appear green mist all over its body. It could make thousands of acres of forest full of vitality. It could make a tree suddenly grow rapidly. No matter what kind of injury it suffered, it could quickly recover. No matter how one looked at it, it did not seem like something a human could do. This was truly something that only a spiritual monster could do. Furthermore, he was only at the pinnacle of 8th grade supreme martial artist at the start. As he fought, he kept suffering fatal injuries, but all of a sudden, he broke through to become a 2nd grade supreme martial artist. Everyone couldn't help but raise their heads to stare at Miao Zhendong and Li Wuyo. They thought to themselves, if I didn't personally witness these two fellows speaking emotionally in front of me, and if the entire process was logical and without any loopholes to be found, I'm afraid I would still think that these two fellows were just having a bizarre dream and were talking nonsense in front of me. Was there really such a thing in the world? If things are really as the two high priests described, those who can do these things really seem like the doings of demons. Yi Qinshan stroked his beard. With Xiao Chenyu here, he didn't dare to raise his voice, but his tone was unusually certain. Everyone nodded in agreement. Xiao Chenyu was deep in thought. He said thoughtfully, if that's the case, if that whatever spiritual monster is really vengeful and has really chased us all the way here, this old man is very interested to see what exactly that thing is. What he meant was that Xiao Chenyu also believed that it was not a human but a spiritual monster. Miao Zhendong's heart turned cold. If Xiao Chenyu were to personally take action, how would there be a share for them? However, the situation was more important than the person. What could he say in his own territory? What did he dare to say? He could only put on a long face and say, Old Xiao, if I can get you to take action, it would be the end of that spiritual monster. I will definitely do my best to help. Xiao Chenyu rolled his eyes and said dispassionately, You'd better go and rest. Miao Zhendong was greatly disappointed at once. From the looks of it, he wouldn't even be able to get a mouthful of leftovers. Forget it, that monster might have already reached the level of a top-grade supreme martial artist by now. Even if he wanted to, he didn't have that ability anymore. Right at this moment, a furious voice came from outside. Miao Zhendong. You two shameless tortoise bastards, get the hell out of here. Miao Zhendong's spirit was shaken. He said, You guys still don't believe me? That spiritual monster really came. With a boom, everyone rushed out of the tent at the same time. A human-shaped spiritual monster was already too rare, not to mention the powerful beneficial effects it might have. The group of experts soared into the air almost at the same time and rushed forward in a hurry. The group of people leaped out of the tent one after another. They raised their heads and looked up, only to see a person in the sky in front of them. His whole body was covered in green and fluttering in the wind and snow. In the vast snowfield, he was especially eye-catching. There really was a spiritual monster. Everyone's spirit was shaken. With just one look, they could tell that this spiritual monster had an extraordinary origin. Its strength was even more shocking, and it was indeed at the level of a top-grade supreme martial artist. The reason why everyone had such an understanding was reasonable. At this moment, Duke Yu was floating in the air like a celestial. This was a top-grade supreme martial artist's exclusive technique, Imperial Air Flight. Imperial Air Flight was definitely different from the extreme speed of ordinary supreme martial artists. Although extreme speed allowed one to temporarily leave the ground and fly at high speed, it was still a type of lightness technique. To a large extent, it relied on gliding in the air to achieve this. Moreover, it required one to borrow the force of the air to breathe after a certain period of time. Although the higher one's cultivation, the longer one could maintain this technique, it was still within the domain of the technique. On the other hand, imperial air flight was the true meaning of flying. Experts who had reached this realm could rely on their own cultivation to completely break free from the gravity of the earth and fly freely back to the sky. If the supreme martial artist realm was the boundary between immortals and mortals, then the supreme martial artist realm was the boundary between man and heaven. Although it was a little arbitrary to judge that this person's strength had reached the supreme martial artist realm based on the fact that he could fly, or it was not impossible that this spirit was born with the ability to fly. However, this spirit's strength was definitely extraordinary. Xiao Qinyu stepped out from the crowd and shouted, "What kind of thing are you? You actually dare to act mysterious in front of this old man?" Duke Yu let out a long laugh and said, "I'm not going to talk to a blind old bastard like you. Hurry up and call out those two cowardly old bastards. This Duke will kill them and leave immediately. I won't cause any trouble for you guys." Xiao Qinyu laughed coldly and said, "Won't cause any trouble for us? What a vile creature. You actually dare to be so arrogant in front of me. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Although Xiao Qinyu's tone sounded like he did not take Duke Yu seriously, in fact, he was carefully analyzing the aura of this fellow in front of him. He secretly calculated in his heart, this thing's aura is not ordinary. This aura is at least at the level of an 8th grade supreme martial artist. But his appearance. Although he has a human form and his speech and actions are no different from an ordinary martial artist, the aura that emanates from his body is the purest kind of aura of nature. It is as elegant as the trees and flowers. And the aura that I can feel from his body, other than being powerful, there is also a sense of age. It seems that the so-called spirit is not completely baseless. Once he made up his mind, his eyes flickered. If this spirit was taken down by him, then his heaven-seizing great art would be able to convert the essence of this kind of spirit into his own strength. If that was really possible, then wouldn't he be able to? Thinking of this, his heart was really burning with passion. He shouted coldly, "That monster, since you are so reckless and rude and insist on finding trouble with our alliance, this old man will fulfill your wish." Xiao Qinyu's voice was still echoing in the sky. His body was already in the air. He stretched out his right hand, and in an instant, thousands of palm shadows appeared in the air. Then, the thousands of palm shadows suddenly condensed and formed a huge palm, grabbing towards Duke Yu in the air. The power of this palm was not outstanding. It was only maintained at the level of an 8th grade supreme martial artist. But the attack range covered a radius of 400 to 500 feet. Xiao Qinyu had already used all his strength in this attack, but the main purpose was to capture and not to kill. Because he also had his concerns. If he killed him, he would inevitably lose a large amount of spiritual energy. Even if he crippled or injured him, it would also create a flaw in his future cultivation. When Duke Yu saw the incoming attack, he instantly felt that something was wrong. This old man in front of him was actually an expert among experts. Although he had already advanced to the level of an 8th grade supreme martial artist, in terms of cultivation, he was still much weaker than this old man. At that moment, he did not dare to be negligent. He stood up, waved his hands in the air, and shouted, "Thousands of miles of ice and snow, I am here to let hundreds of flowers bloom." Before he finished speaking, a burst of green appeared out of nowhere, and even rose up. A layer of green vines suddenly appeared on the snowy ground, and quickly twisted up. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a huge green dragon, and fiercely welcomed the huge palm that Xiao Qinyu had transformed into. The green vines charged all the way, and the flower buds actually gradually bloomed, and then bloomed. All the flower petals were like a storm, and at the same time, they left the branches and shot towards Xiao Qinyu's face. "Ha!" Xiao Qinyu shouted loudly. His technique changed according to his will. That big hand suddenly changed direction and closed. The attacks of both sides collided, and Xiao Chenyu could clearly feel that it was really flowers and grass that were colliding with him. At the same time, Duke Yu's tall body flashed like a ghost, and he was already in front of Xiao Chenyu. His fists and palms were like a whirlwind, and he attacked indiscriminately in a wide range. Although Xiao Chenyu was slightly surprised, his reaction was still very fast. He turned his body, and his left hand struck out with a bang. A cold and bleak feeling of autumn filled the air, and instantly enveloped a radius of 10,000 feet. This move was one of the secret techniques of the Xiao clan, Xiao Autumn Wind. Xiao Chenyu's aura had already been fully unleashed, and he had already made up his mind that he would definitely not let this monster escape from his palm. Duke Yu's face suddenly showed anger, and he shouted, Xiao Autumn Wind. You are from the Xiao clan. Chapter 1506. Duke Wei's voice was filled with extreme anger and suppression, as if there was a blood feud that couldn't be quelled. Back when he was being hunted down and framed in the upper three heavens, the culprit was the Xiao clan. Xiao Chenyu was stunned. I didn't expect a monster like you to recognize the Xiao clan's ultimate technique. Surrender now. Duke Wei laughed bitterly. Old Xiao, since there's someone from the Xiao clan here, I'll definitely kill all of you. I'll come back later. With a bang, he forcefully broke through the encirclement of Xiao Chenyu's aura field. Like a startling rainbow, he shot off into the distance. Although he was good at the secret techniques of the fairies, he was greatly weakened in this world of ice and snow. He was definitely not Xiao Chenyu's match if he fought here. Therefore, he retreated immediately. Yi Qinshin and the others, who had been waiting for a long time, attacked from all directions, intending to stop Duke Wei from leaving. Duke Wei laughed loudly. Endless rivers and mountains. I'm the king. Do you think you can stop me? His body turned like a whirlwind. Bang bang bang. He exchanged blows with more than 10 8th-grade supreme martial artists at the same time. With a muffled groan, he rose from the ground before Xiao Chenyu arrived. With a turn in the air, his figure was already 1,000 feet away. In another flash, the green figure had already disappeared completely in the wind and snow. Xiao Chenyu was naturally reluctant to let him go. He chased after him at full speed. In an instant he had already arrived at the place where Duke Wei had disappeared. But looking around, there was already no trace of that green figure on the ground. For a moment, everyone's expression didn't look too good. This spiritual monster's cultivation had not only reached the level of supreme martial artist, it had even reached the level close to the peak of the continent. It was actually so powerful. Everyone had previously suspected that Miao Zhendong and the other two high priests were exaggerating the spiritual monster's strength in order to shirk their responsibilities. Now, it seemed that these two people had clearly underestimated the spiritual monster's strength. Xiao Chenyu stood firmly in the snow and looked at the snowy sky in front of him. His eyes shone, as if deep in thought, but he didn't say anything. Right at this moment, a sudden clap of thunder rang out, and the entire sky suddenly darkened. Everyone turned pale with fright in that instant. This was the northwest, where snow was everywhere. It could be said that even on a moonless night, it wouldn't be that dark. But at this moment, it was completely dark. It was pitch black. Such an unforeseen event caused everyone to turn pale with fright. What the hell is going on? Why did the sky suddenly darken? What's going on? This is the northwest. Even if night falls, how can there be no reflection from the snow? For a moment, all sorts of questioning voices rose and fell. Yi Qinshin and the others had originally wanted to chase after the spiritual monster. However, at this moment, they were suddenly plunged into a world of darkness, and no one dared to act rashly. In this sudden darkness, even a peak supreme being expert panicked. The darkness continued and a strange evil aura gradually spread out. Even an expert like Xiao Chenyu could not help but feel a chill in his heart. He could only feel drops of cold sweat seeping out of his back. A kind of indescribable fear arose. Xiao Chenyu only felt that his palms were full of sweat. Although he couldn't see anything, he still stared with his eyes wide open. This kind of panic had never happened in the past 10,000 years. What was going on? Could it be that the Tribulation Sword Master obtained the 8th fragment of the Pill Tribulation Sword and caused this change in the world? Someone asked suspiciously. This person spoke in the crowd, but the people opposite him could only hear his voice and could not see the person speaking. Immediately, someone retorted, "Definitely not. The Tribulation Sword has always given off a very bright and holy aura, and its power can shake the world. How could it be so dark and evil?" Everyone felt that this made sense. However, if it was not the Tribulation Sword that caused this change, then what could have caused it? It actually caused the whole world to darken so thoroughly? The darkness grew thicker and thicker. At this moment, everyone, regardless of friend or foe, felt uneasy, as if the sky had collapsed. It was a feeling of despair even darker than darkness. At this moment, it was as if the end of the world had arrived. In another direction, Chu Yang frowned and looked at the sky. What's going on? Why did it suddenly become so dark? And what is this evil feeling? It's actually so strong. Wu Jueqing also had some doubts. This is a completely illogical change in the world. How could it be? Chu Yang raised his head. There was a familiar feeling. He couldn't help but say thoughtfully, "This feeling seems somewhat familiar. I should have felt it from there before." However, it was much weaker than this time. Wu Jueqing nodded. It is indeed a very familiar feeling, and a very dangerous one at that. The two of them said this at the same time. Then, the two of them suddenly fell into silence at the same time. An indescribable pressure suddenly rose in their hearts. Because just a moment ago, they both thought of where this familiarity came from. Wu Jueqing immediately thought of the Dharma Supreme's heavenly demonic aura. As for Chu Yang, the first thing he thought of was the heavenly demonic aura on Yizue. However, there was no doubt that whether it was the Dharma Supreme or Yizue, the evil aura that they had was definitely not as powerful as this one. There were simply too many powerful ones. Could it be that a heavenly demon had actually descended in this world? Could it be that such a big thing has actually really appeared? Chu Yang's voice was grave. At this point, he calmed himself down and said solemnly, "Heavenly demon? Heavenly demon." These two words were said by Chu Yang and Wu Jueqing at the same time. The two men's hearts sank along with the word, blame. If that was really the case, then judging from this earth-shattering aura, no one in this world would be able to control this heavenly realm. What should they do? Wu Jueqing's heart was in turmoil. How could they be a match for such an extremely powerful evil force? Would Elder Qin Feng be a match for it? My brothers, are we fighting against such an evil force right now? Chu Yang's heart was uneasy. How could they be a match for such an extremely powerful evil force? Perhaps only with Zi Xueqing's reappearance would they have a chance to defeat the enemy. Li Clan. Facing the darkness in the sky, Missouri Tianji placed a handful of shiny copper coins in the air. In a land of darkness, his copper coins emitted a dreamlike halo, as if carrying a milky yellow halo, churning in the air. Controlling the world and measuring the heavens. Mo Tianji's expression changed from its usual indifference. At this moment, it was so serious that it was ashen. He shouted silently in his heart and stretched out his palm. Put, put, put. The copper coins landed on his palm at the same time. One coin landed on each of his 5 fingers, one on his thumb, one on his palm, one on his wrist, and one on his palm. There was still one left. It circled around the one on his palm, but it didn't land on it. Ding, ding, ding. A series of small sounds rang out. Mo Tianji's forehead was already sweating. His breathing was also a little hurried. He stared unblinkingly at the golden copper coin that was still spinning in his palm. Finally, there was a pa sound. That copper coin clasped onto the copper coin in Mo Tianji's palm, with its back facing up. Mo Tianji stared at this copper coin, calculating silently in his heart. Suddenly, his face turned green, purple, and then red. He spat out a mouthful of blood. But he still stared at the copper coin, unable to take his eyes off it. After a long time, he spat out another mouthful of blood. It was bright red. After spitting out 3 mouthfuls of blood, Emotianji couldn't hold on any longer. He sat down on the ground, looking dispirited and pale. Heavenly tribulation. Tribulation, tribulation. Heavenly demon descends. Emotianji let out a long breath and closed his eyes in extreme exhaustion. In another direction, Tan Tan stared at the sky and muttered angrily, "Damn it, which goddamned bastard did this? If I find out, I'll definitely destroy him." Outside the Yi clan's territory near the northwest, a figure was flying rapidly toward the northwest. That was Yi Zue. Ever since Yi Zue left the Yi clan, he could feel that the heavenly demon qi hidden in his body was showing signs of loosening. It seemed to be gradually becoming more active, and his sealed strength was also being unsealed bit by bit. His heart was filled with excitement about this. He headed all the way toward the northwest, but halfway there, the heavenly demon qi in his meridians suddenly became chaotic. It took him several days before he finally managed to straighten it out. Then he continued to head toward the northwest. He seemed to be able to sense that there was a huge opportunity that he had yearned for his entire life there. He continued to travel tirelessly, his eyes growing more and more fervent. The moment he stepped into the snowy plains, the sky suddenly darkened. "It's here!" Yi Zue howled toward the sky without warning. His voice was filled with the kind of fervent excitement and happiness that made one's blood boil. The sudden darkness did not last for a long time, but it gave people the feeling that it had lasted for countless centuries. After 15 minutes, that evil aura gradually receded, and the darkness that made one feel despair also dissipated. The world slowly regained its original clarity. Everyone present looked at each other and saw that the faces of the people around them were all pale. Although that darkness had already dissipated, that terrifying evil aura still seemed to weigh heavily on everyone's hearts. It lingered on. The feeling of despair was something that no one could forget, and no one dared to forget. Everyone felt that something big was about to happen in the Heaven Layer continent. In a secret ice cave somewhere in the northwest, the Dharma Supreme, dressed in black, had just completed his cultivation and stood up abruptly. The next moment he was already outside the cave. There was a hint of satisfaction in the Dharma Supreme's eyes. "Wu Jueching, if I find you again this time, you will definitely die." His body was faintly filled with black aura. It was the demonic technique. Suddenly, at this very moment, the sky darkened. An evil aura that the Dharma Supreme was familiar with suddenly filled the entire world. The Dharma Supreme's cultivation was extremely high, and he was also of the same origin as that evil aura. He immediately understood. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.